Hello, everyone, and welcome to From the Ground Up podcast. So we have an awesome podcast coming to you this week. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what I have available on portcitypet.com. So I do have some awesome, what I call BioStraight, which is a bioactive substrate, as well as ISOStraight, which is a substrate for your isopods that is fortified with calcium, as well as some other reptile supplies. We have some gecko perches coming soon, hopefully, and some really cool, innovative new products coming out. So I'm super excited for the future of what we'll have coming out. But we also have some isopods available. Babies are hatching. The ghost just came out. Eastern black king snakes are out. AML buffs are out. So a lot of really cool stuff coming up in the future. And really, breeding season and now hatching season is in full swing. So this is the most exciting time of the year for me. And so, yeah, check out the Instagram Port City Pet, and you can see all the new things that are hatching out all the time. And that's really enough about me. What is up, Justin of Palmetto Coast Exotics? Thanks for joining us. But yeah, so portcitypet.com, check out all that stuff. But this past weekend was July 4th, which for me didn't mean a whole lot. I just went down to the creek down here and drank a beer and just chilled out for a bit. I kept my distance from everyone. I kept a wide distance from everyone. I was just alone in the woods, and that sometimes works for me. And watched a bunch of fireworks here in Philly. Fireworks are going off every freaking day, so even more on July 4th. But anyway, so Bill actually came up with the idea of Bill Bradley came up with the idea to have veterans on for the show for Independence Day. So I hit up a few veterans, which is honestly a lot harder to find than I thought in the reptile hobby. And I realized also that people didn't know that I was in the military, which is kind of funny to me, but I try not to say it a lot. And I was talking to Austin before. I'm actually wearing my shirt from basic training, which I'm just glad I fit in it. So that's cool. I'm going to pat myself on the back. But anyway, we have Austin Warrick of Ragebeard Reptiles and Bill Bradley. How are you guys doing?
Doing all right.
Where's Bill? He went blank.
Uh-oh.
Bill's gone full robotic. So Austin, if you could tune us in a little bit to kind of your military service. Oh, I got Bill back in. So if you can kind of tune us into your military service and stuff like that.
Okay. I served 4 years in the Navy. I enlisted in 2007, went to boot camp in 2008. I was a gunner's mate. I got attached to I was part of the commissioning crew of the George H.W. Bush. We did a tour. We went through Europe and then did our stint in the Gulf. So we did all the workups, got the ship battle ready, essentially. Kind of went through all of its qualifications and certifications to let it do what it needed to do. I was a gunner's mate. I dealt with small arms and crew serve weapons. So like your 50 cal, I was a dual mount captain on the fantail of the aircraft carrier. So that's 250 cals, 3-person teams on each mount, and I was in charge of both of them. I spent about a year and a half in the security division, essentially military police for my ship, TAD, and I did 4 years and got out E5. And yeah, it was a good time. Got to see a lot of cool stuff and met a lot of good friends. It turned me into the person that I am today, for sure. I was not headed down the best path before I joined the military. Could have definitely been in and out of jail and stuff. It was a good thing for me. It definitely put my head on straight. You know, got my priorities sorted out.
Yeah, I feel like in a good way. I mean, I think all of us benefited from it in that way. I mean, my energy was probably misdirected as well before that. But Bill, what was your experience?
So I actually went to the military after college, and then because I'm an idiot, I went enlisted anyway and didn't go officer.
Hell
so,
yeah!
Yeah, yeah, it was awesome. No, So I was like, the old dude in basic training because I was all of 22. So I ended up at Fort Benning. I was in the Army, airborne school. I went to RIP, or when I was in, it was RIP. Now it's RASP. And then I went to 3rd Ranger Battalion. So I spent my whole career at Fort Benning, aside from deployment workups. And then I did one tour in Iraq, came back, got hurt, got out, and that was the story, man. It's pretty much everybody in Ranger Battalion. We do a bunch of fun, cool stuff. You either last forever or get broken. I got broken, so that was.
Yeah, I haven't seen you walk with a limp yet, which is good, or anything.
Yeah, no, I lucked out. It was all in my spine and concussions. So that's pretty sweet.
Because I was gonna say those guys, they always have back problems and stuff like that. And
yeah, and it's stereotypical. Mine was in a jump, messed up my back. The normal stuff.
Yeah, and as for me, 6 years in the Army National Guard, I was an MP, and I was a sergeant squad leader by the time I got out E5, and that's pretty much it. I didn't do shit. I just got into the perfect 6 years for whatever reason, right? Obama administration, basically, and by the time our time to go to deployment happened, we didn't deploy. So yeah, they went to Gitmo. My unit just got back from Gitmo when I arrived, and then they went to Gitmo right as I left too. So I missed Gitmo twice, which is pretty.
I had a couple buddies that did some TAD stuff in Gitmo for a couple years.
Yeah, I hear a really mixed bag, because if you don't have family, like, it seems like a nice place to go scuba diving and play with nutria rats and see some iguanas.
Some coconut crabs.
Yeah, like there's some cool wildlife and stuff like that.
All my buddies were single. They had a good time.
I got a buddy who was a CSM down there, and he always used to text me pictures of all the Cuban iguanas just like chilling around their barracks. Yeah. And he's not a reptile nerd at all. And he originally went down there and he was talking to me about it, and I was like, oh man, the iguanas down there, they're a really big deal. And so he would just send me pictures like, hey, is this cool? And it was this just giant, beautiful, full-grown Cuban, like chilling out next to their smoke pit. I'm like, I hate you.
That's cool, dude. That would be so much fun. Just as something. There's so much to do. Like, you get bored in places like where I'm at in Texas. There's not, other than going to the lake, there ain't a whole hell of a lot to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad place to find snakes, though, in Texas.
Yeah.
Right?
It's very hot.
Yeah. So I think usually, I mean, we've had Austin on the podcast twice, and both times you've been in your snake room, but it's been probably, because it's Texas, probably been 105 degrees every single day, so your snake room's probably a little toasty.
Yeah. I'm up in the spare bedroom today just because I didn't feel like being super hot. I was working outside all day today, so.
Yeah, so I guess for people who didn't listen to those first two, and first of all, you should probably go listen to those first two, but what do you work with, Austin? Just give us a quick overview.
I work with, I guess, start from my favorite to my least favorite. Apodora, Papuana. I've got a group of 4 of those. Brisbane coastal carpets, which are the bane of my existence. I haven't been able to get them to reproduce, so it's really irritating.
Bane of your existence.
Yeah. Brettles pythons. I love Brettles pythons. I've worked with them since 2012. I got my first female. I keep some corn snakes. I've got some Tessera stuff from you, and then I've got some butter stripe stuff, and I just like fun stuff to play around with. Some Dumerals boas. I actually just lost my Woma python female. She was never like a great feeder. I'd had her for about 6 years, and I think she had something internally wrong with her, because I just went in there one day and opened up her tub, and she was like biting herself in the center section and dead. So I've got her in the freezer, and my next door neighbor's animal biologist. We're going to do a necropsy when we get some time to just kind of see what was going on. Like I said, she was not really the greatest feeder, which is really uncommon for a Woma python. So I think that there was something else going on with her.
But that was a super crazy picture that you sent me when she passed away. Like she literally like bit herself. It seemed like mid body and like latched down.
Yeah,
and
it was a hard crank. I had to peel her mouth. Like I wanted to see like how just if it was just like some surface level, she was in pain and opened and thrashed, but there was bruising around the area where the bite was, and it was pretty substantial. I'm recently this year took the dive into some Amazon tree boas. I've got a group of 3 of those, and I'm pretty excited about those things. They're fun, real pretty. Yeah, I mean I got some inlands. That's the last thing, and a pair of inlands. And I should be going up. This season is their first season to breed, so this year's going to be a pretty big year for me. I'm going to be attempting the pop ones, attempting inlands, and then this will be my first year of breeding Brettles pythons that I produced back in 2016. I'm working on a line breeding project with those guys. So
yeah, it's awesome. A lot of cool Indo-Australian pythons going on over there. So Bill, a little overview. Some people know you from CritterCon. You were on CritterCon just a couple months back.
Right.
So
that was
what
awesome.
do you do?
So my wife and I,
Oh, one
do educational shows using reptiles. So we have a petting zoo in Dwight, Illinois, or what is essentially a petting zoo, but it's just reptiles and some arachnids. It used to be a tanning salon, so the electrical was way overbuilt. And so when we took over, we were able to use that to our advantage. So instead of having rooms with tanning beds in them, we have a snake room and a lizard room and separations like that. So our collection is kind of all of the above, everything from an 90-pound sulcata tortoise to corn snakes and boas and all of your typical common pet reptiles, all the way to weird stuff, egg eaters, different things like that. But it's all geared toward doing educational shows, birthdays, libraries, museums, things like that.
Awesome. So as far as reptile keeping goes and the military, did either of you guys keep reptiles while in the military?
I didn't, not at all. I didn't have it's not that I didn't have the interest. I was constantly out on sea trials and stuff. We would be in for a month and then out for 2 or 3 months and in for a week and out for it was just in and out constantly getting our certifications once I got to my duty station. So it was just not really an option. I wasn't going to make my wife do any of that kind of stuff, especially back then. I don't think that she would have. Now, I mean, Katie, so she would definitely, other than maybe like the pop one pythons, she could handle any of them, and I wouldn't ask her to mess with the pop ones. Not that they're mean or anything, but it's a very strong, very large animal, and it's just not her cup of tea. So, but I didn't keep anything while I was in. I wish I could have. I really didn't have the epiphany to keep anything till after I got out and had purchased my own home, and I was like, I can keep whatever I want. So, yeah.
What about you, Bill?
I actually donated the reptile collection I did have back to the college that I went to prior to joining the military. So I did educational shows for them as well. And the college that I went to it's a work college. So in order to be a student there, you have to provide some sort of job at the school. I did shows and stuff and then kind of branched out on my own. So I donated my stuff back to my professor so he could use it and continue doing it on his own. And I kept saltwater aquarium when I was in the military. My wife and I did it together as a hobby.
That's
awesome. So you wouldn't, luckily you didn't have to go anywhere. You said you stayed at Fort Benning, because that would be a hard thing to move, wouldn't it?
Yeah. So we had to move it one time when I moved home, and it was an absolute nightmare. It was a disaster. So we essentially had to start over. And then when I finally got home, that was when I got back into reptiles. But I already had all those connections with my professor and things like that. So I kind of lucked out.
All us reptile people complain about moving reptiles. I can't even imagine moving a saltwater aquarium of any size, really. That's crazy.
So we it ended up turning into a full-blown disaster. So we were moving, and we had a car breakdown because I'm in Illinois, and I was obviously down south of Atlanta. So it was a really long drive, and I was like, we're going to one-shot it. Everything's in buckets. We got aerators. We're going to rock out. And we got to Nashville, just outside of Nashville, and ball hitch came up through the oil pan of my car, and we're dead in the water, not moving. So we found a hotel that was cool. They were like, yeah, we crashed at this hotel. The hotel wasn't cool with pets, so we just didn't really say anything and plugged a bunch of aerators in. And we lost almost all of our fish.
Wow.
Most
That's
of the
awful.
corals survived. We got home, and then we were kind of in rebuild mode for like almost a year. So
Are you still keeping
that stuff
saltwater stuff?
It just takes so long. Say it again?
Are you still keeping saltwater stuff right now?
No. So I went to the academy for my current job, and my son, who was 2 or 3 at the time, he dumped an entire bottle of fish food and an entire bottle of alkaline supplement into my reef tank.
Okay.
And I was in New Mexico, and I got a frantic phone call late at night that my wife had come home and the tank was cloudy and you couldn't see anything in it. It looked like fog.
Dang, that sucks.
And I was like, well, that's all the alkaline dropping out of the water, and it's dead. So when I got home, obviously nothing survived that. It was a disaster. And it's crazy expensive, or it was at the time. We actually were just talking that prices on that stuff have done really well. But it was too expensive to fully restart from dry rock and mixing up salt water. I couldn't justify the expense.
I understand.
Yeah, that's something that seems like quite an undertaking and something that I haven't really looked into, but I'm really impressed with what people can do with that stuff.
Yeah, I've always thought they're a really cool thing. Like, I've always been interested, but I've always heard that it's incredibly expensive, but so is what I do.
I mean, I equate it kind of like reptiles, where you're in for a really long time, and then it doesn't seem like a lot, because the longer you're in, you listed out a ton of snakes, or what some people would think is a ton of snakes. And I was like, okay, yeah, I know what that is, and I have one of those, or I know what those are. It doesn't sound unreasonable to me because I've been in a long time also.
Yeah.
So it's not weird to me.
Yeah.
The saltwater was the same way. Like, we were looking at the tank when we had to break down to move, and it was the military, so they moved all of our stuff, and then we moved that on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, there's this and that, and when did we buy this? Where did that come from? Like, and because it's all fixed, it's like gardening. So then I bought 2 of those, and now it's 17 inches across. Like, that's going to be a bigger bucket. It just develops over time.
But it seems like the opposite mentality, I feel like, or the opposite as far as what you spend your money on. I feel like the setup is very expensive for saltwater. Yeah. When our setups, we usually really are skimpy on that end and have really cheap setups, but expensive animals.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then it seems like, people kind of expect, it's always a thing where like you kind of expect your fish to die. That sounds terrible, but especially a lot of people treat them as like throwaway pet type of things, which I guess some people do with snakes too, but it just seems a lot harder to make your fish live.
I mean, I agree with that statement, because I don't keep any saltwater stuff, but I've got a couple of freshwater, like outdoor tanks that I've set up that are like planted with water iris and all that stuff. Like, it's like a wine barrel, but like a legit wine barrel, not those plastic ones you see at Home Depot or Lowe's. But it's been cut in half, and I stack rocks and stuff. And I finally, I think, got it down, because before I just thought, well, I guess these goldfish and just different little freshwater goldfish and stuff, I guess they last about a year, and then that's a wrap, because I was a huge turnover. And I kind of feel like I've got it dialed in now, and I've had this one goldfish for almost 3 years now. I'm like, yes, I think I've done it. But you expect them to die. You expect to just go out there after a certain amount of time and be like, oh, well, I got to go get another goldfish, But
yeah. Well, and even in, saltwater hobby, when we were in, it was a lot like the import side of reptiles, because nobody breeds that stuff. Like clownfish, people breed now because Nemo blasted it off, and that has maintained in the hobby.
Yeah.
But weird stuff like mandarin gobies and different things. Like we were part of a reef club, same as a herp society, and a guy had bred tilefish, which was really weird. And so we were going to have a reef club meeting in this person's living room, hang out, have some drinks, whatever. And this guy gave us a PowerPoint presentation on how he bred these fish. We're like, oh, that's cool. And then we finally meet the guy, and it turns out he's like, yeah, I'm the first dude in the world to ever, like, I'm a really big deal. It's like a huge scientific achievement or whatever. And we were like, for real? Because you're in Mike and Mary's living room just showing us the presentation. Like, I don't feel like it's a big deal. You know, it just, because it's just not done. You know, like everybody's like,
I go to the community, right? But outside of that community, nobody cares because they're not in the community.
Yeah, you just go to Petco and buy another yellow tang. Like, who cares about a dude breeding yellow? Like, it wasn't a big thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And then we finally kind of looked more into it, and I was like, no, this guy, he should be famous. Why are we just in Mike and Mary's living room? Like, why isn't this a big deal? You know? And it wasn't a thing. Like, we thought it was cool, but we're nerds.
Yeah.
You know, the reptile hobby kind of feels the same way. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you have your few people who go kind of mainstream, but for the most part, everyone's kind of under the radar. Especially, you know, the most legit hardcore people who do like the rare stuff or the stuff that we're really into don't exactly get mainstream notoriety.
Well, and a lot of, like, you got to think, you know, a lot of the dudes that kind of the older guys in herpetoculture, I mean, they were herpers. And then brought it home, like collecting, and the guys that were doing the colubrids and like a lot of the crazy stuff, you know, going out west back in the 70s to now. Those guys are still around, but they probably don't hang out on Facebook. They're like 65 years old and have some of the coolest things I've ever heard of. And you're not gonna, if you don't know who that dude is, because he doesn't play on Instagram.
Yeah.
You know, that's just not, they're not exposed. Partly because they probably choose not to.
I was going to say it's good for his mental, not his, but their mental health, because Facebook's a dumpster fire. So
yeah, and I feel like that kind of
yes,
that makes sense as far as what they're in it for. I mean, their long-term success. I mean, they weren't probably looking for that attention, and therefore they're just worried about their animals. They're worried about having success with their animals, and I think that's why they're successful, and that's why they do it year after year.
Yeah, I've definitely found myself like backing out quite a bit of, like, I'll post and stuff, but I can't scroll. It puts me in a bad mood, man. I can't even look at it sometimes. It's just, I don't know if I'm just getting old and like cranky or what, but it's hard for me to look at stuff now.
Well, but I think dudes like that, or not necessarily guys, but people like that, those are the kind of people, like, when we all talk now in our generation about like the reptile community, those people actually are that. You know, it's like 6 people hanging out drinking coffee talking about the herping trip they went on, like their weirdo, this specific road they found Alterna king snake on. You know, that's their own little community. It's not a Facebook group of 12,000 people. It's like 8 dudes in some part of text that you can find a Baird's rat snake and they know which color of gray it is.
Yeah.
Like it's super specific, small things, you know?
We're actually planning a trip. Me and Evan and Ezra, a couple other guys are going out to West Texas in September. We're going to do some field herp. I've lived here since 2005, other than the 4 years I was in the Navy, and I have never been out there to do any field herping. It's kind of a travesty, but we're going to go out there and get after it. So,
well, I mean, Texas is like 2 European countries long.
Oh, yeah. So it's like a 9-hour drive. It's not a small.
Yeah, but that's something that is like such a vast landscape, and it is supposedly pretty hard to find animals. But the guys who are successful seem to be the old school guys who have been doing it for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah,
and they all know each other, and they're all lifers, and yeah, they have like Bill said, like their own community.
I feel like it's almost flipped on its head now, is where you got guys that start out keeping, like myself. And I mean, as a kid, I definitely like did some field herping. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but I was doing it. And now I'm trying to kind of like get back into the going out and finding stuff versus collect or accumulating all these reptiles, you know? So it's kind of weird. It's like a reverse thing that's going on. So
yeah, I guess that's something because I feel like people all the time are like, you know, it's not like how it used to be. People were more engaged with nature, but I feel like, yeah, like you said, it's the opposite. But hopefully we can, you know, if we have people around that long, you can educate people about the natural history of the animals they keep. And then eventually, you know, they want to go to Australia to see that carpet python, or they want to go to Texas to find some snakes that they may keep. But that takes keeping something forever.
Yeah.
Well, but you got to think about a lot of those guys too that have been successful with things that, like, as the ebb and flow in the hobby, as things fade away or become more or less popular, and now all of a sudden things are more popular, and you got people who are trying to breed things, or, you know, like all the people that make fun of Owen because he can't breed roughies or whatever, like it was a whole big joke. And then to us, it was like, oh, that dude was a big deal to us in our time frame of social media, and rough scale pythons are super cool and really rare and all these things. And then you had older dudes who were like, well, yeah, I did that when it wasn't a big deal. Like, I've moved on. Do you want help with that? And then that's kind of how the joke evolved.
Hold my beer.
But like, they were giving him a hard time, but like there was some truth to that. Like, that's why the joke was funny, is because these older dudes were like, well, man, like in the 80s when we just had light bulbs, it worked out fine. Like, what are you new guys doing with all your fancy LEDs? You know? And it was kind of lost. But I think that was part of it, because the dudes who were doing those things kind of faded away, and then there was no community to maintain their knowledge, you know?
The sharing of information wasn't like it is today. You know, they didn't have that access to be like, this is how I did it, or do you need help? It was just the people that were local around them that knew them, and if they wanted to do it, then they could share that with them. So
I think it's also, think about probably before the 80s, all the big snakes in the hobby at that time, which is probably super small. I mean, they were all natives, and king snakes were a big deal. And that's why people didn't go to West Texas because, you know, just because they liked the snake. They were collecting because it was a super desirable snake. And all these guys were going out there collecting to breed. And so I think that's interesting, and that's kind of a part of herp history that we don't really think about, is the fact that, you know, there was a time where everything was native, and there, you know, you weren't even messing with Burmese pythons probably until the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
for sure.
And those guys were, I believe, just trading with each other at that point.
Yeah, like in hotel rooms on the side of the highway, little trade parties and stuff, right?
Yeah, it's not like there's no real money involved.
No, that almost sounds better to me, honestly.
A lot of that generation are kind of like writing books now, you know, Trumbauer and Bill Love and those type of guys. If you read their books, like, that's what most of their books are. It's a little bit about, you know, how they grew up and became involved in herpiculture and things like that. And then most of it is just them telling stories of meeting up with their friends, who are also all of the names that we know in herpetoculture, and like, oh yeah, I was hanging out, and then we just traded all these things, and it turns out that, you know, moonshine rats were a big deal. Who knew? You know, like, that's how those things developed. Like, oh yeah, this guy had one and I wanted it, so I gave him a king snake, and then now king snakes are expensive and this is. Sorry.
So,
you know, like, they were just buddies.
So with like the ease of sharing of information, we can share information with one another very easily, and that's a good thing, right? But I think it also limits the face-to-face contact, you know, and making those connections with people. So I think that's kind of where we lose a little bit with the internet.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's super, super apparent during this period of time, during the last 5 months or so. You know, I really love going to reptile shows and just talking to snake people, and that's like that's kind of the one place where you're not the weird snake guy. You know, at work, you're the snake guy. Pretty much, regardless of how little you talk about it, you will be the snake guy.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be in a room filled with those people. So yeah, I miss that personally.
Me too.
But I know Bill gets to go out there and still do some education work, which is cool.
Yeah, but you're still the weird snake guy. Like that doesn't change.
But people want you around, right? People want you there.
50-50.
Really?
Like there are plenty of shows where like nobody told their aunt or whoever, like cousin, whatever, that I was going to show up, and then that's always weird. Or like we do a lot of public events where like people pull their kids away, like, and I look how I look, so that doesn't really help. But
yeah, you and I got the same thing going on, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, you still stick out even in that vein. Like, even if they knew and came to the reptile show, like, people have a stereotype of what they expect that to be.
Yeah.
And that's actually why I use my wife, because she looks kind of like a soccer mom, so people don't see it coming. And then she shows up and is like, no, I have a giant python too. Check it out. And gotta help.
Yeah,
out.
I guess. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see, a big dude with a beard and stuff like that. Like, yeah, of course you can manhandle some reptiles, but I mean, yeah, give it to the wife to kind of endear some people to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, she looks like them. I don't. So you just have to fit in, and then it normalizes it. Even for the tarantulas and stuff, that people find spiders way more scary than snakes. It turns out it's my middle child. It's my daughter. And so I'm always like, oh yeah, this little girl, and she'll talk to you, and then it normalizes it for people. I mean, some people still have irrational fears or whatever, but people who are just kind of creeped out, or maybe think it's gross, or just have like a normal, quote unquote, normal reaction to things like that. When you have a little kid who sits there in her little girl voice and talks to you about this fluffy little thing, it normalizes it.
For sure. I found that as well with my kids. My daughters are definitely not scared of anything, really. I mean, they do stay away from the ATBs, but which they probably should. But they will reach down in a tub or a cage and pull stuff out, and I'll have people in there that are, I mean, grown men that are terrified, and it makes it to where they're like, oh, well, that's, I guess, not that bad if that 10-year-old's in there. The 10-year-old girl is picking a snake up out. I'm just being kind of lame, So I've seen that also with my wife as well. I've a lot of times I'm not doing shows like you, which is awesome, by the way. But whenever I do have people over and they're interested, I will bring them in. And if my wife Katie handles the snakes, I see how much more at ease they are than if I'm just reaching in because I'm the crazy snake guy, and she's not a crazy snake lady. She's comfortable with it, so.
Yeah. And I think what kind of sucks is sometimes.
What was that?
It's more believable. Like,
yeah.
They inherently believe you because you're not going to put someone in danger. Like, people don't think that.
Yeah.
But they're like, oh, but you're more comfortable. Maybe this person is as uncomfortable as me. And then if they did it, it's a little bit of a peer pressure thing, but it's just that they're more relatable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think what kind of sucks is when you become the guy that, like, your coworker sends a picture of the snake that they just killed with a hoe, and they're like, "What is this? Is it venomous?" type of deal. I'm sure that's more prevalent in Texas.
I broke my father-in-law of that. He does not kill them anymore. After I was just like, dude, just I get that if you're worried about it, if it's venomous and you want to kill it, but just send me the picture first. Before you do anything, send me the picture, and I'll tell you whether you need to be worried about it or not. And now he doesn't, and I call that a win. It's a small win, but it's a win.
Yeah, but I mean that's super important, and I think it's tough, especially on the internet. You see a lot of these identification groups. I don't know if you guys are in any of those, but yeah, some of the pictures are headless, and people get kind of mad about it, and then those other people get kind of bitter about it, and they don't stop killing snakes. So you kind of gotta educate people and be cool about it.
they're forever going to have a stigma. I mean, all you can do is educate the people that are open to be educated. And I mean, I don't know.
How do you guys, I mean, both of you guys have families and you have multiple things going on. You have full-time jobs, you have this. How the hell do you manage all of that stuff? I mean, like, are your kids into it? I guess, Austin, you can go first.
Okay. All right. My kids, my youngest daughter, Penelope, is definitely into the snake. She like begs me to come out and help. And sometimes I let her, and sometimes I'm just like, I'm going to be out here for 5 hours. I need to move. Like, I don't want to be doing this all day long cleaning, because with a collection the size of mine and y'all's, it's like, you know how it is. Like, you're like, okay, I've got a half a day to get in here, get the stuff done, and clean, like do a deep clean one, because that's what I do, is a deep clean once a week. And so sometimes if the schedule's a little lighter, I'll be like, okay, yeah, come help me do water bowls, whatever. But sometimes I just have to be like, no, you can come hang out, but I need you to like sit over here. You can ask me questions, but I can't have you involved in everything that I'm doing. My oldest daughter, she likes the snakes, but she doesn't really enjoy the work of it. She does have her own crested gecko, and I'm kind of starting to try. She's wanting to start a little breeding project with the crested. She's doing really well with those. So she has interest in reptiles, just not snakes as much with my oldest. It's not that she's scared. She just doesn't really care about them that much. They don't interest her as much. And so I guess you asked how I juggle it is I make the time when I have the time. I mean, obviously my family comes first. My snakes don't suffer from that, but like if I have to push it off a day, I push it off a day, depending on what's going on with I'm running my own company and stuff like that. So I'm pretty loosey goosey as long as stuff gets handled within a 7-day period. I check on everything twice a day, and I do a deep clean once a week. It takes me, I was just talking to my neighbor last night. I said, next time I clean, I need to time it, just like not try to rush or anything, but time it so that I can have an idea of about how many man hours I put into my collection a week. Because that's not something, I don't know if that's something you guys think about. You probably do, Bill, because you're running a legit business. To me, this is more of like a hobby pastime thing. So I've never really looked at it from like a business standpoint. And I'm trying to turn that leaf a little bit this year. And I need to start checking out like my like man hours and stuff like that. So I just try to balance life and family as much as I can, and try not to let the snake suffer, try not to let my family life suffer, my job. It's a juggling act, in my opinion, and you just got to be on top of it as much as you can, and not beat yourself up too much if one thing suffers or is not as on point as the other. So that's kind of how I deal with it. It's more of a relaxed way of looking at it, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think I finally got to the point where I had enough snakes to where I actually had to think about that. And even to this day, you know, I'm pretty relaxed because that was my time to just kind of unwind and do my own thing. So I was just loosey-goosey going through everyone. And then I realized it takes me like, I did it this weekend. I actually deliberately tried to go in an efficient manner. Mm-hmm. And instead of like the 5 to 6 hours I could spend cleaning the whole collection, it took more like 2 to 3. Like I wasn't sitting there just like holding animals, looking at things. But
so it takes me like this is just like rough. That's why I said I need to time it. It's about 5 to 6 hours of legit like water bowls, spot cleaning, full on cage re-cleaning. Like roughly it's got to be 5 to 6 hours, but I really want to time it and check it out because I think that's important. You should know, like, just for time management reasons, you should know, like, okay, I can knock my entire collection out in this much time, you know? So I don't know.
What about you, Bill? How do you balance the whole family and reptiles and job thing?
I don't believe in days off.
It's impossible to have any of it.
No, like our kids are involved. They have each kind of developed their own thing, and they help out with that. My son is very into turtles, so he helps out with that. You know, all of the invertebrates are my daughter's So that's her jam. My oldest is more of a she likes to help at shows kind of thing. She likes to babysit little kids, mother little kids. She's very organizing the stray cats herd thing. But no, I don't have it down to man hours of what it would take to clean everything. I should, but I probably don't want to know the real answer because it's fairly ridiculous. But no, we segregate things I basically feed snakes or I feed lizards. And then for us, lizards is a little bit different. So for us, when I say that, I'm either thawing rodents for snakes or I'm thawing large meat for big carnivores. And then herbivores and insectivores is kind of an ongoing thing. Like anybody that keeps that, you have your routine of this is what geckos look like when they're hungry. So that's when crickets go in type of deal. And then because we have such a large collection, it's a fairly continuous thing. You're checking water bowls every day because depending on who's where and, all the basement stuff evaporates because it's ridiculous. And then I got to do the dehumidifier and it's just a running list. It never really, I don't have a day when I don't have stuff to do at the shop.
So you have to run a dehumidifier in your basement? Yeah.
So all of my aquatics are in my basement. So I have, I have 3 150s, a 300, a 60, a 100, and then 2 300s that are mostly dirt but have big water bowls because it's a redfoot and a gopher tortoise, and then 2 100s that are mostly dirt but the water bowls because I have box turtles and wood turtles. So yeah, it's a lot of humidity in the basement.
Are you? You said carnivores you keep in verandahs? Any
all big monitors.
What kind?
So Argus, water. When you talk about breeding, that is one of the few things. I do have a pair of Argus. Okay. And yeah, I haven't put them together because I knew about the sexual dimorphism, and the female came to us from a friend who she had 2 clutches of infertiles, and he was like, this is a waste. I don't have a male, do your thing. My male is
5 feet.
Yeah, probably over 5 feet easily. And the female is what I would consider, or what I guess most people consider, a normal Argus when she's like 2+ feet and just looks like a little lizard. I mean, I've seen pictures of it. I've never kept to breed, and I always had this one. So I just, for whatever reason, lapsed into the thought process of they all look like that. And then he was talking to me and was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to give you the female and do your thing. She's going to need to be fed a little bit to fatten back up from this last infertile clutch. Cool. And then I show up, and she's in like a bigger Rubbermaid.
And I was like, yo, tree tub kind of thing?
Well, maybe a half of that.
Okay.
But we haul our mail in a tough box that goes in the back of pickup trucks.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
and I was like, that's not the same. We're going to have a problem. We're going to have a problem. But then we also have a dwarf came in, a whole herd of tegus. So, yeah, a lot of big meat eaters.
I would really like to get a big lizard. I don't know. Well, right now, I like to have a really tame one. I just don't think I have the time. I really don't, because you have to put so much time into them. And I want the big, everybody, right, wants that big, super tame lizard. And hopefully at some point when I retire, I can do something like that. I don't feel like I've got the time for it. I tried a couple years back and failed miserably. So
what did you keep? I didn't know that.
I didn't. It was about 5 years ago. Well, it might have been even 6. It was the first Southern Carpet Fest. I had it. It was just and I started off with the wrong species entirely. It was a Nile monitor.
Yes.
And it was a complete and total asshole. And one day I got home. It was about 2.5 foot long from end of the tail to the nose. And it had gotten out. It was in a cage in our living room. And it had gotten out. Actually, I didn't get home. My wife got home, and I get this phone call, and she said, the Nile monitor is in the living room and it's hissing at me and tail whipping, and I'm not messing with it. And I was like an hour and a half away from the house, and I was like, yeah, this isn't working out anymore. I'm going to have to figure something out. So that was my and really, honestly, getting into reptiles, I was a lizard guy from the jump. I kept a bunch of leopard geckos as a kid, a couple beardies. I was always into lizards, and snakes was something that I got into and enjoyed a lot later. And I don't know, the personality of a lizard is it's cool. I would like to have that relationship at some point in my life, but not right now. I don't have the time. So,
man, I wish Niles weren't psychos because they're beautiful.
They are gorgeous. He was a gorgeous animal. He was awesome, but he was so mean. And I tried to do all the socializing stuff with him, and he was just a terror, man. He didn't care. He was a wild animal, you know. So
on the old school king snake forums, there was one woman that I ever saw, and she had 2 adults, super chill.
Really?
And she got babies a couple of times through the life of that forum. And then everybody else, including me, was chasing her example, and they were all crazy. They all got 3 feet long and wanted to eat eggs and rip your face off. They look awesome, man.
They're beautiful. Mine was very, I guess not aggressive, but defensive. It was not a happy camper when people were around. It would tail whip the sides of its cage and all kinds of stuff. So,
yeah, and I guess Bill's probably messed with a whole bunch of crazy monitors just from dealing with rescue animals and stuff like that, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody's gold tegu that they're gonna tame. Everybody's Nile monitor, Savannah monitor.
A gold tegu. That's the Nile monitor of the tegu world, right?
But it's the same way, man. They're gorgeous, and they're smaller. They're smaller than a black and white. If you could be successful with them, I think they would overtake blues. Like blue tegus have their own weirdness because you don't realize how really white an animal can be until you see a blue tegu.
They're beautiful though.
And the white is off the charts.
Yeah.
And then you replace that with yellow and you're like, oh, I didn't know yellow was possible. And it's like, yeah, you didn't know yellow was possible because that one hates you. That's why you didn't know.
That one hates you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I had a buddy over here yesterday and we were talking and he was talking about like green tree monitors. And it's like, yes, that's the animal that everyone would love to keep, the greens and the blues, but you're like, I don't know. That's kind of seems like a handful.
I think I'm with you, Joe, with the Cyclura. I think that's probably the route I'm going to eventually go. I like the rock iguanas. They're dope. They seem to be, I wouldn't say easy, but there is at least a route to go as far as taming them down, and it's a feasible thing, you know. And that's what I think that's why I would go that route with as far as the big lizards are concerned. I don't know. There's definitely I would like to keep coming eye, you know, as far as monitors are concerned, but I don't know. Just the Cyclura seems so chill, and there's a route to get them that chill. And I feel like with the monitors, it's a serious roll of the dice. It's like you could put a bunch of time into an animal and still wind up with a psychopath, you know? So
Riley Jimison was trying to talk me out of getting Cyclura. He, I guess at the zoo, he was working with a rhino and he ended up with some stitches. So he sent me a good picture of that.
Well, I mean, you've always got a
come
possibility. What is it they say? If they got teeth, they can bite you. So
anything worth doing is a little dangerous and fun.
There you go.
My rhino is awesome.
That's the rule that I live by. That's the rule I live my life by right there, buddy.
No, man. So the big deal for Cyclura that I have found, or iguanas in general, it's the same thing as bearded dragons. They're like super visual, and that's how they socialize with other Cyclura or animals in general. It's visual and like all the cues, you know. And then when you're talking about monitors, you're talking about, at least where they live, typically top tier predators, right? Socializing for them is eating stuff smaller than them and making babies, and you ain't involved in either one of those. So you are either a jungle gym to them or you are a provider of food. It's not really a social interaction.
Mm-hmm.
All of I have a huge male green iguana. I have a male rhino iguana. Their interactions are just like the beards.
That's my youngest daughter, Penny. Sorry.
Just like bearded dragons, they're visual. You know, they see you coming. They are looking for the food. They're looking for, like, my green iguana is a total sap, and like when he gets shed stuck, he doesn't even bother to try and get it himself. He just scratches at the window till one of my kids does it. Like,
that's a dog. That's a dog, man.
Yeah, dude, Cyclura and green iguanas outside of breeding season.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've heard is the breeding season's a whole. That's a different thing completely with them as far as the personality is concerned. But that makes sense.
You can see it coming, assuming you've done any sort of research whatsoever.
Yeah.
And for big adults, you can literally see it coming because the thing was green and then it turned orange. Don't touch it. But like, dude, the more you treat them like a dog, the more they act like it, because the interaction is the same. It's visual. Like my bearded dragons head bob at my green iguana. That's dumb. He would destroy them, but they're stupid lizards and want to do that.
Yeah.
And if you let anything out in my shop to walk around, the rhino iguana gets mad. And if it comes close to it, he'll try to headbutt, which I got to watch for the glass. And the green iguana gets jealous and he scratches at the glass. But as long as you let him out and he can stand on somebody, like he feels superior and can look down on everybody, cool.
That's funny, man. That's awesome.
But the monitors don't care. If I walk other lizards by a big monitor enclosure, it's, well, my water and my Argus occasionally think that they could eat stuff. So then they start looking with the little bird face and curl in the neck, like they want to eat it.
Yeah, totally.
Other than that, they're looking for a girlfriend. And if that lizard doesn't look like their girlfriend, they don't care.
They don't care, yeah.
It's math for them. It's just math.
Yeah.
You know, especially with Cyclura, though, for me at least, it's been super interactive.
That's the thing that's a draw for me, honestly. I don't know. I dig that. I mean, so you said except for when during breeding season. So my wife and I, we keep and breed miniature schnauzers. Not crazy. We have one litter a year, and we're about to have our last one, and we're done next year. But so the female miniature schnauzer, she's awesome all year. Like as long as she's not in heat. When she's in heat, she kills my chickens. Like she's a different animal. Like if she wasn't in heat, she would never do that. Thank you, sweetheart.
So
if she wasn't in heat, she would never do that. But I can't trust her when she's in heat. Like last year, she killed 7 of my chickens, laying hens, 7 of them dead. A miniature schnauzer. The chicken's the size of her, and she killed 7. So
the green iguanas came to us through a rescue route, as most stuff comes to us, and they came as a pair, and they were not doing well, that like every stereotypical green iguana. The female has since passed, but the male is trucking along. About 3 to 7 days a month, my wife couldn't feed the iguanas because we'd had them maybe a couple of months, and she went in there to feed the iguanas, and the female went at her.
Oh,
and was like, she puffed up, did the male iguana thing, and was like defending the male. And I got nervous because they weren't super big. So I was like, oh, maybe we got a subordinate male and a dominant male. Like these people didn't know, maybe they gave us 2 males.
Okay.
So I checked, and she's like, hey, you got to go deal with the iguanas. The female that we think is a female is freaking out. And I was like, okay, I'll feed them and see what's up. I go in there. I'm looking around, everything's cool. She's not puffed at me, no head bobbing, nothing weird. I feed them, like whatever, change the water, like nothing. What's up? So don't even think about it. A month goes by. She goes in there. That iguana comes at her. And I'm like, all right, this is weird. I'm going to check. And I check all the fun parts. And it's a girl, right? It's not I have a male and a female. We didn't mess up. It's a girl. And my wife is like, I really smell like a girl right now. And I was like, whenever that's happening, don't go around that lizard.
Don't mess with her. Yeah, that makes sense.
And she was defending her man from an overwhelming female pheromone or
like,
hormone.
this is my territory, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, get back off.
But
That makes sense.
But it wasn't the guy. It was her.
Yeah.
Because iguanas live in harems. He sits at the top of the tree, and then the queen bee sits below him, and all those subordinate females, they get to maybe mate later on. She runs the show.
Yeah.
So to her, like, yo, I sit at the top of the tree. This is my tree. And then you come in smelling like a girl. We got to talk about it.
I got to defend my position as the right-hand lady. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's interesting.
And that we kept that lizard. She ended up MBD and all the stereotypical stuff. We had her for almost 2 years. And that was how we had to work around that. Was, hey, it's that time, I can't mess with the lizards or whatever. And then I would feed them and water them and do my thing.
I've heard of stuff like that, not with iguanas, but that makes sense. That's interesting.
And is that a similar story for the Cyclura? Are there seasonal differences with them as well?
So our Cyclura was, we haven't had seasonal issues. Well, we have a little bit. He's gotten snotty this year, but this is his first full year of like getting his man on. So our Cyclura came to us through a man passed away, and his wife was not in the hobby at all. Mm-hmm. And she had she had some information, but she personally had no knowledge of his collection or things like that. And so I ended up talking to a friend who was trying to organize things for the widow, and we ended up with Cyclura through that route, through the rescue type of thing, and with basically no information. And so we had a big old bruiser male, and what everybody thought was a female. No pores, no nothing, little horns, nothing. We had those 2 lizards for probably 18 months, and then the older male passed away. And another 6 or 8 months after that, the little one, I went to the shop one day, and there was just wax, like just hanging out of the pores. And then over the course of the next 6 months, his horns popped. He got his man on. He's like tripled in size in the last 2 years.
So just having the dominant male in there,
he was just subordinate.
Will cause them to not, like, I guess, mess with their hormones. Is that what it is? Like, it makes them not.
He was so subordinate. I mean, it was the stereotypical thing you always see. Like bearded dragons do it all the time. Like they stand on their head and like push them down. Like they push. You could see the bullying and push them around and things. We separated them, and then we were doing reintroductions, and we had this whole process going on through the entire time that we had the big male. And then he finally passed away, and that little one, there was nobody else around, and he just, we didn't change anything about his care, or he didn't, get more food or no differences, just standard.
He's a big man on campus now, right?
Yeah.
That's
and dude, I mean, I came in and it was just like 2 inches of wax, and I was like, that's not a girl. And then, over the course of the next 6 months to a year, horns pop, he starts to get his side colors. He's gotten humongous now, and there was nobody to keep him down.
Yeah, it's hard to beat a badass big male rock iguana, man. They're cool. They're so cool.
Yeah, I feel like I was always kind of debating, because I know with the Lewis eye in particular, the males are the ones with that beautiful blue and the red eyes. Yep. But I was always a little bit nervous that there may be some seasonal territorialness or something like that. So I don't know. I think I'm gonna play it safe and maybe eventually get a female rhino iguana and kind of start there.
So this is our first season where our male rhino would be able to do the deed. And he's gotten a little snotty. He'll kind of jump at the glass, and he's much more interested in what's going on. He is much more intolerant of other lizards being walked. He doesn't want other lizards around him at all. And the problem is, because we have it set up like a petting zoo, they're visual animal. Like he can see what's going on. Like we have to cover him, and he's much more intolerant of other lizards now.
A lot of visual stimulation going on.
Yeah. But he hasn't reacted poorly to us. He does, like, if you open the door or you open it, like, he comes right, like, he wants to know. He's coming to investigate. He's looking, but I don't want to anthropomorphize a lizard, but like you can almost tell he's looking past me. Like, he's not looking at me. I think he's looking out the door to make sure there's no other lizards.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I assume because it does happen quite often. Like, we walk the lizards, you know, my kids take them out and we move stuff. Like, it's always happening around him. So I think he's just running out to, like, defend his turf.
He's on alert. He's making sure.
Yeah.
That's not what's going on.
Yeah, but it's never been toward us. You know, I open the door, change the water, you know, feed him or whatever, and he checking real hard.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and is like, "Oh yeah, salad pile," and then he just goes and does it. Like, he's never had a poor reaction to us, but he's looking for them other lizards. And that's one of those things where, like, a lot of people do pictures of, like, you know, these are my 4 iguana species and, like, line things up. And I just don't feel like I would be comfortable ever doing those kind of photos now, because I know that some of my big males they're looking to fight. And I don't ever want to risk that.
I've seen some YouTube videos of mishaps of, like, 2 male rock iguanas get it.
It's nasty.
Yeah. Good. It's not good. I mean, to the point of, like, could be death, like injuries happen. So
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as far as lizards go and stuff like that, do you have to do, like, a lot of training with the Cyclora?
We haven't. Well, yes and no. For us, it's more of we station train for treat. It's not treats. I use Missouri chow so that I'm not actually introducing any more sugar. A lot of people use bananas or strawberries or something sugary to get that treat response if you want them to station train or target train.
Mm-hmm.
I lucked out. He really likes Missouri chow, so that's what I use, so I don't have to deal with the sugar. With the green iguana, I do. If you're not using bananas or strawberries, he'll ignore you. He doesn't care. But no, it did take a little bit to, like, you can scratch, again, like a dog. Like, you can scratch behind their ears, behind that little tympanic membrane. Yeah. It gets real rough, just like a green iguana. A green iguana is actually spiky back there. Rhinos and rocks and stuff, it's more of it almost makes a little bit of a ridge, but not as pronounced as a green.
Okay.
So it was much more like, if, you know, we'd give him a treat, scratch him a little bit, and then kind of rub down his back, and just, it was more of a familiarity with someone touching him. And then we moved to, okay, this is a small dog harness, and it's cool because most of those are actually in the chest, and so I'm always weird about it's same thing as like a dog groomer, right? Cutting a dog's hair is no big deal. Cutting a dog's hair between its legs is a really big deal. If you're going to get bit, that's when you're going to get bit, right?
Yeah, I groom all my dogs. That's the truth.
Yeah, so it's much more like, okay, scratch behind the ears. We'll rub the back a little bit. See if I can rub the chest, and then it just moved into, okay, now when I go in there, he like arches up and pushes out.
He expects it. He's like, hey.
Yeah, but I know, like, I'm rubbing the back of my hand on your chest, scratch your ears. I'm going to lift this foot, because they close their eyes just like a cat. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to lift this foot, slide that harness in, rub your chest, lift this foot, slide that. And that, you know, it was just a familiarity with being touched.
Okay.
Because the rhino is lower, it's a lot easier for kids in my shop that are, a lot of kids want to touch the Argus right up until I open the door. And then they don't want to touch the 5-foot lizard because the claws are right. It's, you know, they get freaked out. So it's way easier. Like, oh, here next door to that, this is like a green iguana, but he lives on a rock, blah, blah, blah. And he's right at your height. And I open the door and he pushes his chest out. I'm like, oh yeah, just right there, scratch on him. And then it's much more interactive for them.
Yeah,
so it was just
positive interaction. Yeah.
Yeah, but for the lizard, it was familiarizing, like, nobody's going to go between your legs. You know, there's a very set ears, back, chest, you know, how things are done, I guess.
By getting them used to that, you've set those boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not really. It's more of a you really took a hands-on approach. It's not like you didn't clicker train or do anything, but you have a super socialized animal.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of zoos have been incredibly successful target and clicker training those. That's super cool to see. Like San Diego Zoo, you know, they hang out and like hit the little clicker, and then their guy runs to the station, and there's a, you know, the banana pops out, and then they hit the clicker again. He runs to the next station. It's like an obstacle course for an iguana. That's super cool. Lots of people have been really successful with that. Greens are the same way. You know, you have to account for breeding season more often, and you have to account for their want to climb. But the process is the same way. You know, my green, the only deal for me with the green is I'm the tallest person in my family. And so it's, my wife can't really hold him and do the, okay, well, he's going to sit on my shoulder, and then I'm going to give him a raspberry, and then that's, okay, so this is how you sit. Because it doesn't matter. He'll look at me and be like, oh, higher, and he'll always, they're so arboreal that the inclination, it's really hard to fight that, even with positive reinforcement.
And you don't have that issue with the rocks as much? Or
No, not at all. No. Nope. And they hate to be sprayed with water.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've never had a positive experience. Because like the greens, you know, the heavy arboreal stuff, like you can spray that dude straight in the face and he'll drink out of the sprayer. Mm-hmm. So when I first got Cyclura, I was like, okay, yeah, that iguanas love that. And I did it, and he did like half a backflip and tried to run away. And I was messaging some guys, and then I actually read a Facebook post years ago by Ty Park posted something, and he was like, oh, this is terrible. Don't ever do this. And I was like, yeah, I totally did that. Sorry. Like, yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's one of those things where you do it for all your other reptiles. You don't know anything of it.
You just assume that it would work.
Yeah. I definitely noticed there's certain species of snakes that I can do that too. Spray them direct, like the ATBs. You can sit there with the spray nozzle, just right in the face, and they just sit there and drink. But if I spray a Papuan python or something, which they do like humidity, they just don't want it directly on them. Yep. Like they get real upset. They start hissing and stuff. So I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think me and Austin are about to go look on the forums for some Cyclura after this.
I definitely, it's definitely on my list of things that I'll keep before I'm 6 feet deep. You know, so.
Yeah, me too. That's one of those things where I'm sure you guys all have lists, and that's definitely one on there for me. I feel like, Bill, you must. I mean, shit, you've kept pretty much everything that's common in the hobby. Is there anything that you haven't gotten your hands on?
Oh, geez. Not really. For me now, so I'm a monitor nerd. That's actually the thing that I started out in the hobby really enjoying. I don't know. I never got past the little kid phase. Like I discovered Galapagos tortoises and iguanas, and then giant lizards, and then I just kind of stayed liking giant stuff. Yeah. And I've lucked out that I've kept most of them, aside from the really rare stuff like Galapagos and due to price, obviously. But that actually kind of is the phase that I'm in now. Is my collection is really diverse. And then the things that I add are typically for a lesson of some sort. You know, I add North American stuff. I teach a lot of ecology and things like that. So they're very specific. Yeah. And I enjoy them. They're fun. Like I love playing with rat snakes. They're great. They climb all over you. It's super cool. But I'm adding them to the collection for a purpose, not because I always wanted to have, you know, this weird rat snake. Yeah. So for me now, it's the really large, stupid, expensive, dangerous things that those are the things I don't have yet. So it's crazy stuff, croc monitors, giant things that
was the first thing I was going to say, like a croc monitor. Is that what you're talking about?
For me, I hate that I just on a podcast on YouTube said that, because I feel like that's super stereotypical of like, I want the baddest lizard on the planet.
They're pretty badass, man. I don't think it's
no, they are
badass.
But it's like, I feel like I'm a very successful monitor keeper, and I've kept different kinds of monitors, Ackies or Argus or Waters, or like these different biomes that I've had to be able to sustain that animal. I really want to, and I'm keeping one now that came through the rescue for savanna monitors. I don't think they're appropriately kept in the hobby, so I'm kind of nerding out on that on my own. And it's not like a super cool lizard. I just want to do that.
They're pretty cool, but that's big.
Right, but not, it's not a water or like a Kamingi.
It doesn't have the flash and bang of a croc monitor or something like that, but they're pretty cool in their own right,
And the care is weird, and their diet is weird, and that kind of thing. So like when I say things like crocs or whatever, I want to come home and see a 9-foot lizard that looks like a velociraptor, because that's super sweet. But what I really want to do is I want to figure out how to build a 16-foot tall, 20-foot long jungle in my shop.
Yeah.
And then I want to put that lizard in there and leave it alone, because I don't want to get my face ripped off. Like it's more like I want to be able to successfully keep that. I don't want to like walk it in a thing for Instagram. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You want to successfully recreate the biome and have it thrive in it versus take pictures on Instagram with a harness on. Yeah. I got
so like the stuff that my list of wants now is crazier. They're bigger or they're more expensive or what have you. But for me, it's because, I've kept these things. I've recreated these habitats, and now this one's going to be harder because it's really big. Ideally, the first version of what I'm going to put a croc monitor in eventually someday will be what I'm going to put my green iguana in very soon. I want to build this large arboreal jungle biome, know that I have it down, and then move to an animal that, like, I can put a green iguana in there and then deal with the maintenance and deal with the animal and really have very little consequences if I wear gloves, even during breeding season.
Yeah.
Like, you can grab them. It's not going to be fun, but you can do it.
They're going to piss all over you and all that stuff.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Once that I built this, I understand my parameters, my mist, and so on and so forth. Now it's the animal, and then that is a higher level of, all right, for real, don't get bit. Watch the claws. Pay attention. It's kind of upping your game, not necessarily just upping your collection, I guess.
That's interesting. So that totally makes sense. I've been watching a couple of these guys on YouTube that are building these giant enclosures for their large constrictors. And when I say it's not even an enclosure, it's a damn room, right?
Yeah.
And at the moment right now where I live, I don't have the space to do that. But my end goal is I want a freaking 12-foot tall by a 12 by 12 by 12 foot room that I can put each of my poplin pythons in, that's planted and it's got full spectrum UV. As I am in this hobby longer and longer, or business or whatever you want to call it, for me, it's a hobby, but I want a place that I can walk into and kind of get a little slice of the environment and know that my animal is extremely happy and has every single, yes, I'm keeping my animals in very large cages, like the poplins and stuff, but that isn't a room. That's not a giant habitat. I would like to get to that point, so I totally understand that.
I equate that to dart frogs, right? So you're creating an environment that for most dart frog keepers, that's just expected. Mm-hmm. You go to an online retailer, you go to a Josh's Frogs type of thing or what have you, You know, you go to Port City Pythons and you get your substrate, you do these things.
Hey,
And,
I did that.
but it's expected, you know. I'm gonna get these plants, you know, I got these orchids, I got a couple of these little mini ferns, you know, I called up Joe and I got some isopods and I got so on and so forth. Like that's just on the list, man. Like you just have to do it.
It's standard operating procedure for the little military stuff where you some SOPs right there. Standard operating procedure for dart frogs. Why can't that translate into keeping large constrictors? I understand that, like, and I mean, I'm in the situation right now. They're not in small cages. I keep my adult poplins in 6 by 3 by 2s. So they're 3 foot deep, 6. I mean, it's plenty of space for an adult poplin python. Could it be better for them? 100%. And why not, if I have the ability, provide that for them? You know, and plus it would be really cool to interact with that entire environment. I don't know. We're definitely, I don't know if I would say we're missing the mark, because you can only do what you can do. But I don't know, maybe we're missing the strive to be more as far as the community, as far as like what we're keeping them in. I don't know.
Well, and I think a lot of that probably goes to some of it is ignorance, and not in a negative term, but in literally that people lack
ignorance
knowledge.
Isn't a negative thing. I mean, it's just lack of knowledge.
So, like, for me, my wife manages a hardware store, and so I'm always wandering around like, that's a broken shower stall. Like, I remember seeing back in the day dudes that kept green tree monitors and blue tree monitors and black tree monitors in old shower stalls. And they would like wander around construction sites and wait for a dude to break one and then ask if they could take it or whatever, you know. But I just think maybe it's a lack of knowledge on people's part to know how to do that, which I totally get. But so you're going to go to a big box store or to a reptile show, if we can ever have one again, and get like an all-in-one kit for crested or something. That works and that's cool, but then get your all-in-one kit and try to keep some plants in it, you know, or just like that next little step. Yeah. And then but in 20 years, when you're me, you're going to be like, okay, so my buddy has got a really cheap shipping container, and I think I can put a retic in it with some trees.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, man.
But it's the same thing, right? It's just, you know, I built a bunch of enclosures that are in my shop. You know, they're like 8 by 4 by 4, and then I got a couple of weird ones, and I have all these giant tubs in the basement or whatever. But, okay, well, why can't, you know, I have a 300-gallon trough that my gopher tortoise is in, and then I don't really have anything above it. Okay, well, why don't you plant some ficus in it or something? Like, why, you know, change out a light bulb above it for a plant light? Or it doesn't have to be, I didn't drop 50 G's yesterday to build a gopher tortoise enclosure. Like, I waited till my wife called me and was like, yo, ficus are 25% off. And then I got 3 or whatever, you know, like, I just don't think
it's a frame of mind kind of thing. Like, it's, so I'm my job, or what I do for a living, I'm a contractor. I'm constantly building and fixing things. That's what I do, all kinds of stuff. And so my mind is working in that way of like, okay, well, we could do this, this, and this for not very much money, you know. Like, I guess it's being in that realm. So like you said, ignorance, being in that realm and understanding like, okay, I'm handy, I can build things. Why can't I do this? Why can't I make this that much better? I don't think that it's a negative thing per se for that people keep animals the way that we keep animals. It's just I guess an ignorance in not knowing how to progress. You know, like take it to that next level. It's not that anybody's doing it out of negligence or anything like that. They don't even look at it as like, oh, we could do this. Like, it's a possibility you could build this elaborate environment for this one animal, you know? So,
well, and I think a lot of people get scared by cost, because a lot of herpetoculture is expensive, especially when you try to do cool stuff. You know, I love, like, I'm not bashing those all-in-one enclosures and the kits and stuff. Like, they end up being super cool stuff, but they are pretty expensive for some people. And then so you see people are like, oh man, I got a 20 long and a screen top, and then I did my own thing. You know, awesome. Extrapolate that out to, if you go to the feed store, the 300-gallon stock tank that my gopher tortoise is in was $160.
And that's the thing that's missing the mark, man, is that people don't know that, like, I spend more money at places like Lowe's and Tractor Supply and feed stores on my reptiles than any kind of pet store or at shows or anything. I spend so much more money on, I mean, like, or even like my rats. Like, you don't, like, people talk about the bag of Aspen with the snake on it versus going down to the feed store and you can buy a freaking bale of Aspen that's kiln dry or pine shavings that's kiln dried for $2.50. Do you know how much? I mean, that's so much savings, and it's just because they don't know, you know, like,
absolutely.
I mean, it's just being savvy and kind of, I don't know, I guess being in the hobby or living this lifestyle that we live for long enough to where you're like, I really want to do this, but I can't spend $300 on one animal for pet shavings a month, you know? I mean, that's a dumb example, but you know what I'm saying. So,
well, and the hobby or industry, or however you want to frame it, has done crazy, amazing things, right? Like the mist systems and the LEDs and the lights and all the equipment, right? So take all of that is super amazing, and then you don't have to do that. Like, you don't need to string LEDs or learn to code to make a mist system or whatever. Like, all of that's provided for you, and now you just need this next little step.
Yeah.
You know, like, I was goofing around about the shipping container thing, but like, we have priced shipping containers for a swimming pool, an in-ground swimming pool. You can make ponds out of them and stuff.
I honestly think that's a fantastic idea. I don't think that was a goofy idea at all. I think that's a really badass idea.
It would be super cool.
Like a couple grand a piece. They're not very expensive.
But how many? So someone will hear us say that on the podcast, or is watching this in the chats. There's like 80 alerts on my chat thing on my screen right now. They probably heard that and were like, "That's insane." You know, that of course that dude's going to drop 10 G's on a thing and then buy a $5,000 platinum retic or whatever. No, man, like, it's still a lot of money. I'm not saying that it's not.
No, I'm not saying it's not a lot of money, but in relation to what you're purchasing, $2,000 is not that much.
Right. I just don't think they know that, right? So like, if you got a really nice PVC cage, it's still a couple $100 minimum.
I mean, probably $5. You know? You're looking at like $400 to $500 for anything that you're going to keep a large constrictor in.
Sure, absolutely. You know, so if it's like, all right, and a lot of that goes to like, I've listened to Joe on a bunch of different podcasts where we all kind of preach about that, about like people doing research or being better prepared and things like that for keeping these animals. That kind of goes that way, right? Like, if you were going to get crazy and get Apodora and like, all right, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to spend the money, I'm going to get these really big snakes, they're very powerful, so on and so forth, I know all this stuff. Let me chill for like a year or two, roll my pennies, and then I'm going to go to Menards and wait to see in the back for one of the knocked out shower things, and it's going to be stupid, and I'm going to build it, and then I bought some LEDs last year, and then I saved up when the mist system was on sale, and then and like so on and so forth. And it's a project. Yeah. Like, if you're like, I literally was remodeling my bathroom today. That's why I'm on this trick. But like, I bought my sink last year on sale because I knew that I was going to put this gigantic blue sink in my bathroom at some point. And then it sat in my garage until I did it because I had to retile the floor. And that took forever because tile's expensive, and I bought it on sale. Like, do the same thing. Like, okay, I got this, and then, all right, I'm going to wait to buy my plants until I get the lizard because I got to have that, and then I'm going to get some substrate. And I got this list. All right, cool. And then you got this whole pile of stuff sitting in your garage, and then you blow a week's vacation, and then turn half of your garage into a water monitor enclosure or whatever.
Yeah.
But you didn't buy a water monitor 18 months ago.
Yeah.
You're going to buy a water monitor in a month after you just dropped, in total, you probably spent $3,000 over a year and a half. And then you bought a $150 lizard because you knew it was going to get 8 feet long.
Yeah.
It just, I don't think that's not a frame of mind for most
It's not.
people.
And I don't know that you can, I mean, even people listen to this podcast that are new into the hobby or into keeping, will listen to it and take it seriously, just because I think that frame of mind comes with experience and like keeping these animals, and you think, no, I can do it. I can do this. I can just slap this together. And then you do that, which I think all of us are guilty of, right? On the spot doing this right now, you slap stuff together, and then you're like, shit, this is not how I wanted to do this. I wish that I had waited or whatever. And I mean, you can talk to people till you're blue in the face. They're going to do what they want to do, So
sure.
And I mean, I guess that's just like doing it, and
I would say like I built this whole collection, and now I'm at the point where, oh shit, I don't actually want to keep all of these animals, and I don't want to keep them how I have to keep them, having this number of animals. So I just finally bought. I started building an olive enclosure, an 8-foot cage, and then after it was sitting for like 3 months undone because I got super, super busy, I just bought one.
Did you?
Fully build it. Yeah. So now I have a half-built 8-foot enclosure, but I ended up getting an 8-foot PVC. Chris Foley built it with. I'm finally going to have light fixtures, so I'm going to work with halogen lights, and I'm going to slowly see how all that stuff works. And because I haven't messed with too much of using anything than heat tape and like heat panels and stuff like that. So I think that's really where the hobby is going, and where the technology and husbandry is going, and things like UVB. I'm also going to eventually be able to hook that up as well, because there's actually going to be multiple light fixtures. And so I'm excited just to mess with that stuff, even though 8 feet is not. I mean, most people would keep them in a 6-foot cage, right? But still, 8 feet for like a 10-foot python.
Well, yeah,
I'd love to have a much larger. I only have so many 8-foot walls in this house. I literally have one 8-foot wall without any obstructions, which is my bedroom, in which I previously would not have been able to do that. But now that I'm by my lonesome, I can do whatever the fuck I want. And so I'm going to put that shit in my bedroom. And so I'm super pumped about that.
You know what you need to do with that other 8-foot enclosure is get another olive python. So
I'm going to have it. I'm gonna put a divider down the middle.
Oh, you're gonna make it to where they can go between the two of them?
Nothing crazy like that. I'm gonna basically just put a piece of wood and divide it and make 2 4-foot water, and then my carpet. So
your water definitely deserves that. Your water python's the chillest water python I've ever messed with, dude. Super chill. Super chill.
It's a rare animal, so it's like like not like rare like the species, which is kind of rare, but just because people don't like them, but also it's a very, very well behaved animal for the species. It's really amazing. Yeah, so I'm super, super pumped to start messing with that. I mean, Austin, I know that you just built this bioactive enclosure. Was it for I believe it's for your Amazon?
Yeah, it was for a red phase ATB that I got. It's a wild caught. I got it about 2 years ago. Or no, about a year and a half ago. It's like not this last February, but the February before last, NARBC Arlington. But I did that with David Braun's stuff, and then that's my very first bioactive enclosure, and it's working out great, man. All those springtails and isopods I got from you are like very prolific. The whole inside of it, you just sit there at nighttime and it's crawling with isopods. The whole enclosure, it's pretty cool. But that's my first time ever messing with any kind of bioactive enclosure, and I really dig it. I don't know that I would want a bunch of them, but I think I'm definitely going to go that route for all of my ATBs. I would like to do some kind of very large enclosure. This is kind of my this is my thought process right now as far as all my ATBs are concerned. I want to do a very large, like 6 foot long by like 4 or 5 feet tall, and 2 foot deep, like completely bioactive enclosure, and then do like a third of the floor or the bottom of it as an aquarium, and do some kind of fish inside the aquarium with ATBs with like a glass front where you can still see the fish, and then have all your substrate on the other side completely planted, and then do like a group, like I know everybody hates on it, but I cohab all the time with like my Brettles pythons and stuff like that. So I've as long as you're not feeding in the same enclosure, it's pretty chill. And I would like to keep all of them kind of in, maybe not all of them in the same enclosure, but like a pair in the same enclosure, this giant planted, just something I could come out and like watch and look at and enjoy a little bit. I think I kind of got to a point in my keeping that it was very methodical. I had a cleaning day, and I wasn't getting to enjoy my collection like I wanted to, and like sitting out there and watching things. And I think it's because I was keeping very sterile, you know? And I think that would be pretty awesome to do a completely just giant planted Viv that and I build all my own stuff. Typically, I buy racks, but as far as caging is concerned, I build all my own caging, and I think that I've got this vision in my head. I'm doing a horrible job of describing it, but I've got this vision in my head of what I'm going to end up doing, and I'm pretty excited about it. So.
Yeah, and the more and more we get into this stuff, you find that it's a rabbit hole. Obviously, we're prone to getting into the details of all these different things. We've collected all these different animals and researched all these different animals. So it's like, it's just another thing to have fun with. And the more animals I keep that way, the more I want to do it. And having gargoyle geckos in leaf litter.
How are the gargs? Do you like them? My daughter's wanting to get some gargs. Do you dig them?
Maybe not for the kids. I mean, they are good. They are good. The only thing is that they're a lot faster and jumpier than say like the crested geckos are not as close to athletic, and they're a little bit more predictable. Okay. So like you're less liable for the kids to like kind of lose them because the geckos can be kind of fast. But I open them up, and it's like, I have to look around for like 5 minutes, and it's right in your face kind of a thing. Like they blend in so perfectly to their surroundings. Like,
so I've almost got nailed in the face like 2 or 3 times by my ATB because of this damn bioactive Viv. So like it makes you realize just how camouflaged they are. Like when I'll go out there at nighttime, and I'll be spraying everything down, doing my normal misting stuff, and I'll open up the bioactive Viv, and I'm thinking like it's up in its arboreal hide, just hanging out, and all of a sudden like I focus, and it's like right here in my face. It was on the perches, like all just in plain sight, but because the pattern breaks up and I've got all that false wall and stuff, you can't see it. It's just right there. It has happened. I'm not even kidding. Like 4 or 5 times where I'm like, whoa, oh man, I got to do a better job of like evaluating the situation because, they just blend in so well. It's pretty interesting. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's something that I really enjoy. Like even if you go to a zoo and you have all those naturalistic enclosures and you're sitting there for a certain amount of time, like trying to spot the animals, I like that kind of stuff. And with like the Leachianus gecko, it looks just absolutely perfect on like cork bark.
Do you have a Leachy?
Yeah, I just got one.
Well, did you?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man! Congratulations.
It's a baby.
You're in the big boy world now. You're in the big boy gecko world. Those are badass.
I'm a little like, I don't know how to treat it exactly yet. It's really small. It's a little skittish. So yeah, I've just been letting him chill out. He hasn't really eaten yet, but even when I got my gargs, like for a while, I was holding him way too much and like playing with them way too much, and they weren't eating. And then I was like, what's going on with this? And then I'm like, wait a second, go back to the fundamentals of keeping reptiles. Like,
leave them alone
with your animals right when you get them and stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, I'm being a child.
I'm a huge fan of the term, the benign neglect. Like just leave. I handle my animals I mean, maybe once every 2 weeks or so. Like, and that's like when I say handle, I mean hook out so that I can clean the cage, do the stuff, put them back. Now my Pop One pythons, I handle a little bit more just because they're freaking. I don't know. I'm a super dumb geek about it. I really like them, but other than that, everything else is like all my Morelia and stuff. I kind of just let them be, man. Like I don't feel the need to pull them out all the time and stuff like that. And a lot of my bigger stuff, like my big female Brettles pythons, they don't want me to pull them out. They're assholes. Like after they have their second clutch after breeding, I don't know what it is. I've talked to a couple people. I talked to Casey about it, and he was saying that he has had the same issues. I've had females that, like, before they had laid any eggs, they were totally chill. And then after something happened, like after they had their first or second clutch, they're almost like you have to handle them with a hook. Like they're not friendly. There's no just reaching in there and pulling them out. They will light you up. And it is, trust me, it's not a pleasant bite. It hurts real bad. It's unpleasant. So
it's a big head.
Dude, I mean, I had one hit me, like, let me see, over here. Hold on, I gotta get the camera. Okay, right here, like in between right here, like on the knuckles and in the soft part right here, and her teeth went down into my joint. It was not cool, man. It was not cool. It was awful. And so I'm like, okay, well, you guys are getting hooked from now on. Now my males are chill. They don't. I mean, I could pull my male Brettles out all day long. They don't do anything. But those big breedable females, they're just, I don't know. It kind of sucks, man, because my Harris line female, she was, I mean, I could pull her out, put her on my shoulders, and she even, after her first clutch, she was still cool. But after that second clutch, I don't know if it's like a hormonal switch or she just is tired of being in captivity, but she's not the most tractable animal. And it sucks because I don't know if you guys have ever had an animal where you're like, you have this pretty positive relationship with, and then all of a sudden it's just, they're not having it anymore. And I don't know. But
well, it's a little bit warmer in my room upstairs. It's actually where I have all my shipping stuff, but I have the pythons in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was showing my buddy who was over yesterday, and it's a little extra hot. I took that water out. She was good. And then, but then again, she was acting a little tense and a little bit weird. So I was like keeping the sharp end away from me. Then I put her back, and then she just struck in the air like a weirdo. So, yeah, that animal that we were just talking about, how docile she is.
I mean, I said docile for a water. So
yeah,
they're all usually psychopaths.
Relative. It's relative.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I mean, Bill, do you have a bunch of pythons, or I feel like we haven't talked about your snakes?
Yeah, we have kind of all of the above. I have an IJ, if that's what you want to keep calling them, or however you want to say it. We can really mess with people and just call them pop ones, and they'll get real confused about what you're talking about.
That's the part that irritates the shit out of me. Like on NPR the other day, they were saying Eric was someone brought it up, was like, if they don't say pop one carpet, it's confusing as fuck, and it really is. It's confusing. What are you talking about?
Don't call it an olive. Don't call it pop one an olive either.
Yeah, don't do that either.
Right.
That pisses me off. That makes me real mad. But anyway, continue, Bill. Sorry, I didn't.
No, so I have an IJ. Actually, I have quite a handful of Morelia. IJ, a jungle, and they're all just standard, typical examples, so I can show people. Most of them came through rescue avenues. Big old gray coastal that was the stereotypical, oh, it's supposed to be the giant carpet, right? So it's like a 9-foot monster female that's bigger than my forearm, and she just doesn't care about anything because she's way fat. Dude, I got her. Actually, I got 2 of them, and one almost immediately passed away because they're obviously terribly cared for. It was one of those deals where, like, hey, if you take these 2 enclosures, you can have the snakes in them. And I was like, what are they? And the enclosures were super nice. I actually was inquiring about the enclosures. He was like, oh, yeah, look in there. The one's like a lunatic, so I don't want to mess with it. And there's just these 2 monster coastals. And I was like, yeah, they're going to go on a 6-month diet. Sweet. one didn't survive that ordeal. But the one that I currently have, I did not feed that thing still hardly ever feed it. It's way too gigantic and fat. I do have a male Brettles, and then my male jungle is still very small. There's a big old granite berm. I have a tiger retic, a really small woma, handful of ATBs, a handful of red tails, Crebo, whole bunch of colubrids, like an 8-foot beauty snake. That thing's amazing. I love those. Yeah, kind of all of the above.
What kind of what color face ATBs do you have?
I have a male Halloween and then 2 females that are just plain old brownish ATBs straight out of the jungle from wherever they came from. So it's awesome that you said that, because I co-have them as a trio, and apparently I didn't know people hated on that. I don't care.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I think they would look so cool in this giant enclosure. I think it would be so badass.
Oh, it's super cool. Dude, the enclosure I got them in is like 4 feet tall. I got like a bunch of different, like I made different layers of like how high they can get up and when they perch and do their thing. And like they kind of get their own stations. And then as I water and spray, they who's got the better station for where it's raining, and then they'll try to move there. So I move the rain so they won't crowd each other, and like, oh yeah, they interact, do all sorts. It's super cool.
So do you manually mist them, or do you have a misting system?
Manually.
That's what I do too. I kind of like it. I've thought about putting misting systems in, and I'm like, I'm kind of a little bit of a control freak when it comes to the collection. So I kind of just like being able to be like, yeah, I did that. It's done. I don't know.
I had a mist system on an Ambronia enclosure specifically for that, though, because I planted it out, and I got really into the cloud forest aspect of those lizards. And I live in Illinois. Like, I can't recreate that I can't just stand in my shop and mist this lizard all day. Like, I just can't. Yeah. So like I had the system on that, just for that recreation, to try to grow those plants and do those things. And it was great. It works wonderfully. But that was a singular thing. Everything else is manual.
Okay.
So you must go, and I just got into the spraying game really, because all I had was the ATB previously that I really had to spray. Now I'm spraying geckos all the time. Yep. You must have a shit ton of things to spray all the time, though.
Oh yeah, I went to the hardware store with my wife, and I got one of the. It's like 4 or 5 gallons. It's got like a shoulder strap. You just carry.
That's what I've got. I've got the exact same thing from Tractor Supply. It's like mine's like 3 gallon. It's a 3-gallon cylinder with a shoulder strap, and I just sit there. It's so much better than sitting here going.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You just pump it 3 times, and you can do the whole collection. It does. Yep. It's nice. But I've got for my ATBs, I've got orange, like a citrus phase, like
nice.
And then I've got tiger, orange tiger from Nick Mutton, and this red. It's a red phase. Its saddles are like green, and then its head is yellow, like an orangey yellow. It's pretty crazy looking.
Whoa.
I picked that. That one's wild caught. I picked that one up. So my other 2 are real. Like I can, as long as I'm not making fast movements, I can handle them. They're pretty tractable. But that wild caught, it was a juvenile when I got it. It's an adult now, but it's not tractable at all. It'll musk and just it smells like a tire fire, dude. Anytime I interact with it, I'm like, it's gross, man. But I really dig them. They're so pretty. Like everybody hates on them because they're like they can be a little cantankerous, but they're so pretty. It's like eye candy. How can you not like something that's that damn pretty? It just sits there and it does all this hunting posturing and stuff at nighttime. And that's usually when I'm in my room the most. So
I've never understood that mentality. Like there are so many different reptiles that get that reputation of, because ATBs are smaller, right? So they're jerks. They're kind of little, you really just set them up and watch them. And it's like, okay, well, there's an entire section of the industry dedicated to stuff like dart frogs and chameleons. What's the difference? Like it's little, but it's little pretty stuff that you watch. Like tree monitors are little pretty monitors that you watch. All the Australian dwarfs that are smaller than Ackies, you don't play with them. It's like a leopard gecko on steroids. They're too fast. You build a cool rock enclosure and watch it because it's cool looking. Like why aren't ATBs like that? I don't understand where it got lost in translation.
The need to touch. I don't like. I get okay. So I guess I understand the need to touch for some things. If you need to touch it, get a corn snake.
Yeah, I was about to say I do need to touch things. That must be why I have corn snakes because I literally like to hold them.
There's a lot of animals that you can pull out and touch. Right. It's just a different sect, I guess, of the hobby, and just because it's something you don't like doesn't mean that it's inherently bad. Like you shouldn't just poo-poo it because you don't like it because you can't touch it. And I feel like that's where a lot of the hate with ATBs comes from is people are like, well, you can't pull it out and hold it, so it sucks. Well, no, man. But they're 5-inch and red and they're beautiful. Like what I don't know.
So the snakes that you just described that you have, right? Mm-hmm. To me, and then so I have my male is like a crazy black and white scatter shot pattern with devil red eyes, like crazy looking Looney Tunes snake. Yeah. And he hates people. Fine, that's cool. You can't touch it. But and I'm probably gonna make a bunch of people mad. But what is the difference between the snake that I just described and like the coolest green tree python on the scene right now?
There's not a difference.
Why like green trees are like, oh, I really want, all these crazy colors in this snake that is supposed to be green. And then you can't ever touch it and it's really hard to take care of. All right. Well, why don't you buy an ATB that looks like that already and then get a green tree python that's green?
Yeah, exactly.
And you did the same thing. Like it's little, it's beautiful, and it hates you. Isn't that what you wanted? And then you bred like 50 generations to get a black one?
Yeah.
Like why didn't you just buy a black one, dude? Like what? I don't know.
I'm right there with you.
It's always been weird to me.
And I'm not hating on green trees. I definitely dig them. They're cool as hell.
No, they're super cool.
Joe's got one, but and I get green tree guys. I'm good friends with a lot of green tree guys like Ian and Mark Hager and stuff. But it just, I don't know. They're cool. It's just not something that I really want to mess with. Like it's not in my realm of stuff. Maybe at some point. It just doesn't really jazz me up, man. Like it's not my thing.
I'm gonna be honest. After having it for so long, I mean, he doesn't move. I try to put him on display and he does poorly. And, he'll have bad sheds. He won't eat properly. I have to keep him, in a bin basically and put him on top of a shelf and not, if I put him where my eggs are at this time of the year, like last year, and he stopped eating just because there was too much traffic. Yeah. It's like, it's a little bit more boring than say your ATV is always going to eat and stuff like that. And I love my green tree. But then again, like I didn't go for a designer. I got a U.S. Captain born and bred animal.
You got a green tree.
But it was like $400. It's not like I was going to take out a second mortgage on my house like some of these people are doing. So,
well, and the thing is like what you just described about green trees, how it's finicky and doesn't display well when in high traffic areas. ATVs don't display well with a bunch of people moving around. They want to hide. I feel like most of your arboreal stuff doesn't. What they're trying to hide. So that whole display animal, it's right out there. I feel like any green tree that you put out or ATV that you put out in a high traffic area is going to get stressed out and it's not going to want to be out in open plain view. It's just, that's the normal thing. People just have these expectations where, oh, it's so pretty, I'm going to put it in my living room next to my TV and people are going to ogle over it. That's not how it works. It's with the ATB or a green tree.
I just think it's funny that he described a ball python.
It's just on a stick.
Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah. Really the only difference.
I mean, my ATVs, I had my red phase in the living room for quite a while I was in quarantine. And you know when I saw it? In the morning and at nighttime. During the day, it was hiding in a corrugated tube, and you couldn't see it at all. All you saw was the green plants planted in its enclosure. It is what it is,
same
man.
here. I have
You just can't have
my
outrageous expectations about these animals. They are not comfortable with a bunch of big monkeys walking around, so.
Well, that's like the trio that I have. They're in an arboreal enclosure, and then there's a duplicate enclosure right next to them with the male jungle. And then across from that is our baby Smoothfront came in. And they are all in the bathroom of the shop. So the lights are off in there, the door's closed the vast majority of the time, unless a visitor has to use the bathroom. And the only lights are in their enclosure, and they do their own thing. It's all set. Like, they're not bothered at all. So that when I do go in there, I don't turn the light on, and I chill and I can watch them do their thing, but they're not fazed by me. There's no traffic. I don't turn the lights on. It's intermittent that the room would be lit, and it's never loud or anything. It's just a person using the bathroom. I did that on purpose. That male jungle's kind of high strung, and the baby Trig, I wanted her to be able to settle in and do her own thing. And then ATBs are jerks, so they're by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have a unique situation just because it's only me and I get to have my ATV in the living room. But
Right.
he does perch every once in a while. And he was perching today right at the corner, but a lot of times he'll go to like the corner of the enclosure and kind of hide out for quite a bit.
1 second, gentlemen. I gotta run real quick and take a potty break. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, but I like having that animal in there, but I was talking to my buddy yesterday and saying, hey, maybe I should get something that's a little bit more of a display, maybe a pair of Barron's racers or something in there.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you think about display animals, though, I went to Scott Borden's house. He has these little Clemeri, I believe they're called, which is like one of the dwarf geckos, the ones that are like electric blue and green and like just the most amazing thing you've ever seen. And those things, you can have them all set up. You can have them set up bioactive in a communal setup. Like, I don't know how many, he probably has like 4 or 5 in there, and they interact with each other, and you see them like head bob at each other. And like, I don't know why that isn't, like the biggest pet animal just to watch.
But the thing about stuff like that is like it's all of those bright, active bug eaters, that's a natural part of their life. Like those animals have to risk it to be out and go after bugs and do the things that they do. So it's not weird for them to be running around on the plants by us. Either they have the camouflage to think that the crazy monkeys won't see them, or they're bright blue, so the monkeys should be scared to eat them because they're poisonous. You have to find animals that already interact like that, and they're already bold and out in the open, either because of their hunting practices or because they're something like a dart frog where I don't care, you can't eat me, you'll die, or whatever their reason is. Like my Arizona mountain king snake it's a tiny little snake. He sits right out. He doesn't hide from anybody. He doesn't care. The entire snake is designed to scare you into thinking it's a coral snake. Of course he sits out. My bull snakes don't. They hide. And then when you mess with them, they hiss and rattle at you because that's what they're meant to do. Like,
and slink back to the back of the enclosure.
Yeah, don't look at me. And if you see me, I'll fake like I'm a rattlesnake and then bite you square in the face. Yeah. You know what the animal does. Don't put it in your living room. Like, that just makes sense, dude.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's, we were talking about creating all these elaborate setups and stuff like that. Yesterday, my Louisiana pine was and she's in a tub, and she was just hissing and striking, even struck the front of the tub. And it's like, I'm going to have to buy like a boa rack eventually, like an ARS boa rack, and black out the front. And that's an animal that spends the most of its life in a burrow. It does not want to be disturbed at all. So I think, that's where that animal deserves to be or wants to be. So, you know,
For sure.
sometimes I guess you can't go with these elaborate setups with some species.
That's how the one Pituophis that I have is this animal that was rescued, that was jacked up, that I got, and I've had it since it was like this big, and now it's 4 or 5 foot long. And when I open up its tub, it's in a 41 quart breeder this tub, and I open it up, and it's like, nah, man, I don't want anything to do with you. It goes all the way to the back that's still covered, and it's like, just change the water bowl out. Fuck off. I'm good, man. I don't need any of that. I don't need any of that. I still pull it out just because I'm selfish and whatever. But
yeah, and they don't allow any type of they don't allow you to get one over on them, as far as they're always looking at you, like you said before, like they'll slink backwards while still looking at you. Like they never trust you.
They're like, yeah, I'm still here. Yeah,
they're keyed on, man.
You put your hand in there without a hook, they're gonna nail you. That's for sure. And once I get mine out, he is still very like wild. He's still like kind of wiggling and stuff, but I don't know. I guess because he's wild caught, he's a little bit more wily. But I've never been bit by him. He doesn't musk me. I can just tell that he's uncomfortable, and so I keep our interactions to like a 1 to 2 minute interaction. I hold him, put him back in his tub. I don't try to overstress the animal, and that's a once a week interaction at most, maybe probably once every 2 weeks. You know, I don't pull it out every single time I do spot cleaning and water bowls, but I also don't want to overstress the animal. You know, whenever it came to me, it had a hole in its back, and the end of its tail was bitten off by a house cat. So I'm telling you, it was this big, and now it's a 4 to 5 foot long animal, and I just pretty much am gonna keep it until it dies, and I'm just gonna give it a good home, you know. And I don't have any plans of breeding it. I enjoy my interaction with it, and I respect the animal in a way that it wants to be left alone for the most part, you know. So
yeah. So have you Bill, just rescuing animals and stuff like that, have you gotten any, do you have any like morph animals, or you have mostly wild types?
It's kind of a mixed bag. So the 2 big pythons in my shop are morph, the granite berm and the tiger retic. Honestly, because it's getting harder to find normals of the big stuff. And anybody who does education needs to have big stuff, just because that's what kids want to see. When it comes to the snakes, yeah, pretty much everything is wild type, with the exception of one of my bulls and my daughter's ball python, because she wanted a pretty one. But yeah, it's pretty much all wild type stuff. The one bull that I have a hypo, just like everybody does, Stillwater hypo.
Team wild type, man. Team wild type.
But see, it's beneficial to me because most of the lessons I teach are based off of that. And so I do teach some genetics lessons, but it's only if, you know, like a school were to ask for it, or maybe I've done some at some museums or some charity events for zoos and things where they do want a scientific lesson. They don't just want boa selfies. And then I'll get more into it. But even for that, like I try to teach that more on locality phenotypes, where I start to talk about, you know, like I used to do a thing where I taught king snakes across America, and I would start out talking about king snakes in California, and then go into, you know, Arizona mountains, because scientists suck at naming things, so they're found in the mountains in Arizona. And then, you know, Mexican blacks, because they're black and in Mexico.
Real original, guys.
But I would show, like, you know, here's a Cali, you know, all right, here's a Cali that we used to call coastal because it's brown and has a stripe, and then a Cali 50-50, you know, and then you go to desert. And it's like, okay, well, literally this one's in California. And then if you muddle the stripes some and it's more yellow, it's in the desert next to California. You know, and then I would just, you know, teach my way across until I got to Florida and the Brooks, and like it's this weird black and spotted, mottled, crazy looking thing. And I'm like, nah, it's cool. They're all king snakes.
I feel like that's almost an easier way of teaching genetics, honestly, on a locality level. Like you're teaching it in a way that is applicable to where they're at. I dig that, man. That's cool.
And because like I had morph ball pythons for a little bit to teach that type of a lesson. And then when I was in college, we used morph corn snakes, and it ended up just kind of being like a Punnett square lesson. And that sounds a whole lot like math, and kids don't really want to hear it. It worked great at the college setting, and then I would teach high school kids as a college student, or teach other college students, because they expected the academic answer. And they're like, I gotta listen to this nerd talk about Punnett squares and it sucks and whatever. And then I could just show the visual result of the Punnett square by handing them corn snakes, and that was like the incentive and fun part.
Yeah.
But now when I teach it, it's more on, okay, well, this snake's ancestors evolved to be this phenotype, and then the ones that didn't look like that got eaten, and so on and so forth. And then even now when people there are some hardcore nerds doing locality water snakes and rat snakes and stuff now that you can get a little down the rabbit hole on Instagram and find really cool, weird stuff for like people that enjoy getting mussed on for no reason and keep
from like
water
Nerodia and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like from like specific counties in Florida, and I'm telling you, you can see the difference. Like when you ask like, oh yeah, what do you care about a water snake from so and so parish in Louisiana or from this place in Florida? And the dude's like, well, they're 20 miles apart, but in between those two swamps is a dry part. They can't get there, and so they look different. And it's like super crazy, hardcore differences, and then I can teach the genetics off of that.
Yeah, if some people are hating on locality like water snakes, this here is a broadband water snake.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, so
awesome.
These are actually typically found just north of Dallas.
Hey, check it out. If I could find a snake that looked like that, I would get mussed on every day. I'll tell you that right now. I don't know.
These snakes are incredible.
I don't know what it is about the reds and oranges, and I think that's what drew me to the ATVs. Red and Brettles, pythons and stuff like that on a snake, like red and orange on a snake. I can't. It fires me up, man. It's
so
badass.
What's funny for me is I'm red-green color deficient. I'm not colorblind. I just struggle with it.
You got a red beard. How is that possible?
Right?
Your beard is more red than mine. I know that the lighting in here fucks mine up and it looks brown, but I have a red beard. So yours is red though.
Right, but it looks brown to me. I don't even know. Yeah. But like that's always my thing, man, is like that's kind of what sparked me on that. Like when I saw animals like that, like, yo, if that looks bright red to me, it's probably off the charts, because most of the time people tell me stuff and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, looks brown.
But that looks red to you?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, they're crazy.
That looks like magma. That looks like that looks like a magma flow in Hawaii to me.
See, but the thing about me though, like, so my wife is not nearly as big of a reptile nerd, but she does the business with me. She is convinced that our IJ and the Brettles, she's like, yeah, dude, they're just brown carpets, whatever. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. One is green and one is red. It's totally different. And they're like, you're the guy that can't see those colors. I'm telling you, it's the same snake. Like, she literally, I'll ask her to get one out and she'll pick the wrong one up. She cannot. Looks like the same thing to her.
My holdback female squidge is red. Like,
oh yeah,
red. And I can't, like, I'm super pumped to breed her to her. I've got a holdback male that he's not as red, but he's got the blacks that I'm wanting for this line breeding that I'm doing. And I mean, he's definitely red, but he isn't like her. But it's her brother, and I'm going to put them together this season, and I am very excited about what's going to happen. I may be holding back that whole clutch for about a year or two before I sell anything.
Well, I know last time I was there, I mean, you had the majority of your animals from, I think, months prior anyhow.
Oh, dude, I've got so I produced 2 clutches last season, 2019 in September. And I produced 30 animals out of those 2 clutches, and I have 27 of them still because I'm holding on to them and looking at what's what. I'm actually pretty close to. I've got it pretty dialed in now. They're pretty close to a year, so I've got an idea. But so out of those 27, I've picked one. There's one animal that is going to stay with me, and the rest are going to go up for sale. But,
did it happen to be a female? Because I know you got your male.
So I've got my male. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to do some genetic diversity, and so I have one. So one of the clutches is one that I've reproduced three times. Yeah, 3 times. It's a forced to Harris line Brittles python. And so I kind of know what's going on with that. So I didn't really, I've looked at them. There's some definite like standouts, but I don't need any more females. And all of the standouts, it seems like any time I pair those two, the standouts are female every single time. They're always female. But I've got I paired that same male, that a Forest line male, to a undocumented but probable LASIK line animal. It's I got the male from Jeff Back. Joe knows Jeff Back. He's in the Air Force right now, but he was pretty into the hobby, and he's kind of doing his military thing, and I'm sure he'll be jumping right back into it whenever he gets out. And he gave me his female, who's this probable line LASIK animal, who's like a 50-50 split. Is her black comes like 50% of her lower body is black with the banding, but like she doesn't get any red down past 50% of her body. It's pretty wicked looking Brittles python. Usually it's like just like that last third, but it's just black all the way up to that about halfway. And she produced a male from paired to that F4's line male that I've got, and he's staying with me. And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to mix a lot of these lines together and get these real high contrast animals, and I'm pretty pumped about it. This season, it makes me feel like I've been in it for the long haul. That I want to be able to like reproduce from the same animals from animals that I produced. Like that's a good feeling for me. It means that I don't feel like a flash in the pan. I feel like I'm in it for the long haul, and I care about this stuff. I care about the people involved. I care about this community as a whole. So.
Yeah, I'm almost to that point. I'll feel really good next year is when I'll really get animals that I have a like deep connection to, that I've hatched out. Even though, because I've let some go, I've made some bad decisions and animals have gone.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. So I haven't gotten to that point yet, but hopefully this year. But yeah, guys, I'm not going to get you in trouble with the wives or anything because we've gone over 2 hours. But it's always nice. I know this is we kind of made it like an Independence Day. We had a couple veterans on, but it's nice when you talk to other people in the military. And I think you guys know this too, even if we weren't both into snakes, which definitely helps. There's a different kind of connection, and you're able to easily talk to each other more than just a normal person. At least that's how I feel. So I really appreciate you guys coming on and having this talk, man. It's great. It's honestly great having 3 people because you guys could talk to each other and I could attend to the chat, and I didn't have to work as hard.
Oh, hey, I actually did see in the chat that somebody asked. The Crebo that I randomly mentioned in my list of snakes is a blacktail.
I was going to ask you. I meant to ask you what kind of Crebo is that? So.
It's a female blacktail.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
So that actually came through the rescue along with the beauty snake, and
wow.
Those 2 snakes are one of the few success stories. So the woman who ended up having to relinquish the animals, it was not a positive experience for her. She was older. She wasn't able to care for them anymore. So it literally, she had kept them perfectly adult size, like no issues. It was that she was elderly and couldn't care for them. So I ended up with an 8-foot male beauty snake that is perfect. And then an adult female blacktail Crebo that she has like a cataract in one eye, but otherwise there's nothing wrong. Like they're the best rescue animal possible. is that the owner literally kept them until the end of their life, as opposed to the reptiles. It was super cool.
That is really cool. Those are two species of snakes that you do not hear being rescued very often. So, and it's probably because she kept them to the point of that she could no longer do it, which is, I mean, sad, but really cool that you were able to hold that torch and keep moving it on, you know?
Yeah, you have to have a deep interest to get animals like that.
Yeah, for sure.
The best part is, like, so when the folks at the rescue called me about it, I'm the guy that takes the giant weird stuff because I have the facility. And I either foster it for them or whatever. Most of the time it stays because you can't ever adopt out giant things. Nobody wants them. But like I heard the backstory, and in my head I was like little old lady. So I thought, like, I didn't think adult, like adult
Black-tailed grebo, big old giant,
and
Blue beauties are a handful.
Dude, I showed up. And like the lady was like, "No, for real, it's an 8-foot beauty snake." And the creeper, and like the beauty snake is pretty chill, eats small rats, normal, skinny arboreal. It's cool. The beauty snake, the crebo. The only way I have gotten the crebo to calm down is I don't feed it with the snakes. I feed it thawed meat chunks or chicken pieces when I feed the carnivorous lizards. Like that thing ate. So a bunch of my buddies are all hunters, and we hunt snow geese. It's an EPA thing. It's they're considered a nuisance, so they shoot a bunch of them.
What did you say? It broke up a little bit. What did you say?
Snow geese.
Snow geese.
So they're they're a little bit smaller than a Canadian, but they do a bunch of these nuisance hunts where they just shoot a ton of them. And it's pretty wasteful. So when my friends go, we always make them into sausage. But you get like 100. You can't make that much sausage. It's just not possible. So they all come to me, and then we clean them and bag them, and that's how I feed my lizards because we don't want to waste it. So like she eats a goose breast. Like that's how I get her to chill out, because otherwise she is just full on at the door, like coming for your face.
So you got to fill her up to chill.
Oh, dude, like she'll eat a drumstick. Like I go to the grocery store when chicken is on sale and buy a package of drumsticks.
So you're a piece feeder too. I like that.
Austin, you do that with Popwins, right?
Dude, I feed my Popwins eat all kinds of shit. Like,
oh yeah.
Dude, I feed them chicken drumsticks. I fed them whole chickens that my dogs have killed because waste not, want not, right? I've fed my Popwins guinea pigs. They eat all kinds of stuff, dude. Like, I get the argument of like, oh, you got to feed whole prey. Okay, I get like for the gut bacteria and biome, like, yeah, that's necessary. And so what I do is I take a whole prey quail, I'll toss a giant quail in there, and then I put 6 drumsticks in there. There's your whole prey. You're good. You're good to go, man. Like, I don't understand why there's such this crazy negative, like, oh, you're a Tyson chicken feeder. What? You're an asshole. That's what you are. You're an asshole.
Well, and like I've used those snow geese whole for like just to stimulate the monitors. Yeah. I mean, it's a pain for me to clean up, but like, dude, a 5-foot Argus monitor do some damage to a goose. You know?
My Popwins, what I do is I chop the beak off and I chop the legs, the feet off, because I've found that they have trouble. They do. I've had not the whole, they haven't regurged the whole thing, but I'll go out there and they'll regurge a whole chicken foot, like a whole fucking chicken foot. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's just not have that stress at all. And I'll just take a hatchet, chop the chicken feet off, crack the beak, just because I feel like that's not really digestible anyway. And then I toss the whole chicken in there. And I mean, I don't know, waste not, want not. I try not, as long as I feel like people are keeping their animals the way they should, I try not to judge them on what they're feeding them. I mean, come on, man. Like, they're wild. Like, the animals are going to, like, if they would eat it, if you're offering it to them and they're going to eat it, they would eat it in the wild, right? Would you agree with that or disagree? Like,
Yeah.
If you're offering,
how many pictures show up on social media of king cobras and all these other giant snakes eating roadkill?
Yeah, yeah.
Like-
I've went squirrel hunting and fed my snakes squirrels. Obviously, they're frozen for months at a time before I'm introducing those squirrels to my snakes. But
my red-tailed boas will mess up a squirrel for sure.
Yeah, they'll eat them all day long. Why not? Make sure there's no shot or anything, or better yet, use the 22 and there is no shot, and feed them to your animal. I mean, it's
absolutely.
I mean, there ain't no more. What is it? Grass-fed, grass-finished. There you go, buddy. Grass-fed, grass-finished.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a new thing also in the hobby, is just mixing up what you're feeding your animals, and I think that's super beneficial.
I've been doing it for a long time. I've never really stuck to one thing with my animals. There are a few animals that I can't get to eat anything else, and I have an African soft fur colony for that, and that is what it is. So
yeah,
and
yours don't smell, which is amazing.
Well, African soft furs don't really smell, man. You clean them every 2 weeks. It's a clean. I mean, for a rodent, and I don't like rodents. I'm not a huge fan. I don't like if I couldn't keep a European rat colony. I couldn't do it. They smell. They're awful. I've been in other people's houses that have them. I'm good on that, man. I don't want anything to do with it. My ASFs, I can clean them every 2 weeks. They procreate like nobody's business. And, right now I'm kind of in a downturn. I need to get some new blood. I think I've got a little genetic depression going on. But aside from that, usually under normal circumstances, they are procreating like crazy. And if you have a problem feeder, they're great. But and really the only thing that is stuck on those in my collection are the Brisbanes. And the Brisbanes have been a headache for me since I started trying to breed them. So.
Yeah, to catch Bill up to speed, the female almost bit off the male's peens.
Yeah, and then the female got out this following year, and so this is all my fault. I'm not saying I told Joe about this. It's crazy, right? So I'm gonna put this out there. So the second year that I attempted to breed them, the first year she slugged out. Second year I attempted to breed them. The female, she didn't bite his peens off. She attacked him. I don't know what happened, but broke his tail to where I could see muscle tissue and bone. And so I had to separate them and wrap everything up. He's totally fine now. His tail works completely as it should. He's got a little, at the very end of it, a little bend. He's fine. But, and then the next year, which was last year, I tried to pair them again, and I messed up. I left they have a sliding glass door on their cage, and I left just a tiny little crack.
Yep.
She pushed out. She flexed, and I'm going to flex and bust out of this. She flexed and busted out of her cage, climbed up the 8-foot tall rack up to the ceiling, got onto the ceiling fan, and couldn't get down. So I didn't know that this happened. This happened at nighttime. And I go out to my car on Sunday morning, and my lights are all automatic in my snake room. So in the morning, sometimes I don't run out there and check everything. I'm like, okay, everything's good to go. I'll be out there around noon, whatever. I was going to change the oil in my car, and I just hear bam, bam, bam. And I'm like, that's coming from my snake room. My snake room is in a double car garage that I have split in half and built a room in the other side. And I'm like, that is coming from my snake room. What the hell is that noise? And I run in there. She had gotten onto the ceiling fan, and her head was hitting the TV in the room and the other cage. There was blood all over the place.
Oh,
God. And so I'm like, oh shit. And I cut the fan off. I am distraught. This is a project that I've been working on for 6 years. I'm crying. I don't know that I've ever I'm being kind of a baby about this, but it's an animal I care about, right? So my wife's in the room, and I'm about to faint, man. I see this big female that I love, and she's bleeding, and she's like, I cut the fan off and she does this like and blows a bunch of blood out of her face. And I'm like my room looks like a murder scene. There's blood everywhere because she's been spinning around on this ceiling fan.
Yep.
And it's awful. This is legitimately the worst thing that's ever happened to me as a keeper. I even feel bad admitting to it, but it is what it is. I mean, we all have these crazy things. She got out, got stuck on the ceiling fan, and she had been however many hours hitting her head on this TV and cage stack. My room is covered in blood. I get her down, and she's still breathing. And I'm like, I don't even know what to do. I guess I'm gonna soak her and get all this blood off. I mean, what do you do in that situation, right? I guess try to call a vet but even then, like, what are you gonna do? Her head is swollen to about 3 times the size as it should be. And this is a coastal female. And I put her in the water and I soak her for about 6 hours and I put her back in her cage and I say, okay. I said, I legitimately super fucked up. I need to reevaluate. It put me in a place of, I don't know that I can keep doing this because I just put an animal that I care about very, very much in a bad position because of my negligence. Although it was a piece of sliding glass that I didn't close 1/4 of an inch, still my fucking fault, right? So I put her back in the cage after she soaked for about, I think it was like 5 hours. I let her just really kind of sit out there. It was outside, and I put her back in her cage and I didn't feed her for 3 months. I just let her be. I was like, I'm going to just see how this unfolds. She went all the way back down to normal. She started feeding. She had bowel movements. There's no damage, no broken bones to her jaw. She didn't have any trouble feeding at all. And I put some size on her. Like, she went completely back to normal. I mean, I showed Joe the pictures. I don't, like, if you'd have saw the amount of blood that was in the room, you'd have been like, she's dead for sure. When I saw her on the fan, I thought that she was dead. I thought I was going to be burying a snake. And I put her back in the room and I gave her time, like, just, I didn't even touch her. I didn't pull her out. I changed water bowls, spot cleaned, let her do her thing. She healed up completely. And then I paired my male with her this after a vet visit. I did go to the vet, make sure that she got x-rays and stuff. And I paired my male with her and she slugged out again this year. So my male is a piece of shit and he doesn't get the job done. So yeah, they have been a complete nightmare. I love them. I'm not going to get rid of them or anything like that, but it's just like, it's one of the, I guess we all have those projects when you're breeding where it's just like,
they're doomed.
Year after year. It's a doomed project. Yeah. I guess they're just going to stay with me until they die or procreate or whatever. Dude, they're just going to be there. So what are you going to do? I don't know.
Your male got hurt the first year, and then your female the second year. Like,
the male got hurt the second year. First year there was no incidents, and she slugged out. The second year is when the male got hurt, and I had to pull him, and then my dumbass left the cage open. It was my worst moment as a keeper, and it has made me reevaluate keeping. I have since installed wedge locks on all of my sliding glass doors and put a camera system, 2-camera security system in my room that I can check remotely via my phone. And those are 2 of the best things that I've done in my collection because of that. And you live and you learn, but I wish that I didn't have to. It sucked. It was an awful experience. And I don't wish anybody to deal with that. You think you got everything figured out and you've got this room that's all set up and the temperature's right and everything's fine. And you do some dumb shit like leave a sliding glass cage open 1/4 of an inch that they can flex out of. And it makes you feel like the worst keeper of all time. And honestly, I was contemplating getting out of keeping because of it, because I felt super irresponsible and like a piece of shit. So,
And I know that you're like a little bit tentative to tell that story at first and all that, but shit like that happens. But not only, is stuff like that going to happen, now thousands of people are going to hear that and know not to do that, and also to take precautions and to be, safe about it, but also to be like, oh, I know Austin has gone through this kind of stuff. You know, keepers have their setbacks, and
it was a huge setback. It made me it made me sad, man. It was not a cool thing to go through, and I'm sure everybody has their like version of that after that. I mean, I've been keeping for 12, so legitimately like on a large scale for 8 years. So I'm sure people that have kept more than me have stories that would dwarf that, and you know, whatever, but you just got, I don't know. I feel like that stuff needs to be put out there because we all fuck up, and I definitely did that night, you know, so.
Well, on that bummer note.
Don't leave it on a bummer note. Come on, man.
I'm trying to think what's a good question to end it on. I don't know. What do you guys?
I was going to talk to you guys. So earlier when you were talking about the snake that had bit itself, so that is a really common response to pain in general, but specifically dealing with the heart. Okay. That's actually happened. That's happened to us twice.
Oh, you've had that? Okay. I'm all ears.
So the coast, when I was talking about the two coastals and the first one didn't make it, that one, I found that snake in the exact same position, had clamped right across itself. And then we actually, when you talk about having not necessarily mistakes, but things that make you want to get out, my wife just walked in, so she's gonna be mad that I was telling the story, but we had a close to 18-foot retic who passed away. I'm sorry. Who passed away, and it was the same thing, mid-body like that. And that was her, I don't want to do this anymore moment as well. But we actually necropsied that animal, and it had water, not necessarily water, it was a fatty liquid, around the lining of its heart, which we talked to the vet. It's not something that you could know as a keeper. It was just something that happened, likely a genetic deficiency. But yeah, though both times there were heart issues, and the snake just full in the chest on itself. And
that's exactly what it was, right middle, like where the heart would be. She was clamped down on. Yep,
it's a response to an unexpected pain right there, and you usually end up finding a dead snake in that case, and it's something along the lines of heart failure. Okay. So the president of the rescue that Joe was referring to that I'm involved with, she's a vet tech, and she's the ARAV, Associated Reptile and Amphibian Veterinarians. She's their representative for vet techs. And I did the same thing. I was like, yo, my snake is in the shape of the number 9. Yep. What the hell is going on? And she's like, oh yeah, I had a heart attack, or whatever the snake version of a heart attack is. And I was like, what the hell are you talking? It's a standard thing.
How old? Can I ask you how old that animal was? I'm just curious. So
the coastal, I don't know, but it was every bit of 8 feet. I mean, it was a big old monster. So it was older, and then the retic was 10 or 11 years old.
Okay.
And again, that was a rescue, so there was definitely some power feeding early in its life, so it was a little on the fat side.
The Woma that did that was a rescue as well. I got her because she was a problem feeder, and for the last 5 years I had been nursing her. She was, for a female Woma in 5 years, she shouldn't be 3 foot long. Like, they should be substantially longer than that, and that was a result of. So I'm thinking of something that was going on that she probably shouldn't even have made it to that point. So That makes sense.
And I do think they're in herpetoculture in general. I know for sure there is, but there's a lot of weak genetic pools floating around.
Yeah.
And it just, when you have a pet store or type of, you have no idea the source of the animal type of situation.
Yeah.
Especially in that type of situation, if it's a rescue or just a dumped off animal, it probably didn't come from a robust genetic pool. That wasn't, it wasn't like Nick Mutt with his crazy ancestry. Like, you know what I mean?
Oh, I know. Most of my stock, as far as Morelia, comes from him. So, it was upsetting because I really love that animal. It was one of those, and I'm sure
But you worked so hard with her.
I really did. I would talk to people who kept Womas, and they're like, "Well, I don't understand why you're having all these issues with getting her to eat, because I've never had this issue." I'm like, I don't know. She's gorgeous. She just doesn't like. I have to feed her quail, and I have to like rub a lizard on it, and like I had to do all this crazy stuff to get her to eat. And I go out there. I mean, it was my wife's favorite snake that we owned, you know? And so you get this attachment to an animal. And so I totally understand where your wife's coming from with you not wanting to talk about it. Her name was Octavia. And, I mean, I text Joe whenever it happened, the day that it happened, because I'd never experienced anything like that. I'd never seen I opened the drawer and she is in the 9 position, just like you said. Clamped, busted into whatever, like tissue, clamped onto herself. And you think, what did I do? You know, like I haven't done anything different than what I've normally been doing. But thanks for a little bit of clarification. I appreciate it.
Oh, dude. I knew that the coastal was not a positive situation just because of the giant coastal, you know, stereotype. But with the retic, like we full on freaked out because that was our giant snake that we used for shows and so on and so forth. And then it just happened. And I was like, no way. You know, I did all this. I knew the care. I was down pat, you know, feeding, and like my vet is a friend of mine. We went to school together. So like I called up and I was like, you need to do this, because I know I didn't screw up. You know, I was dead set. And it did, you know, him and another vet did the necropsy, and he was just like, look, dude, there's no way you could have ever known that. You're not doing CT scans on your snake. Like you just can't know, you know?
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like so I'm a dog owner and I love my dogs, and mammals show you whenever they're hurting. And it sucks being also a reptile owner who I like I told you, when I saw that Brisbane coastal on the ceiling fan, I almost passed out. Like it took me a lot to keep my composure in that situation. And it sucks because they don't show you. They don't show you that they're hurting. They don't show you that, and you can be a student of the serpent as much as you want to, and I'm in my room every single day looking at my animals, and even with that, you miss stuff. And there's no way of knowing what's going on 100%, and it kind of sucks. It sucks because you feel like you could have prevented it, and you can't, you know?
Yeah. And as someone who has so many snakes myself and knows so many people who have so many snakes, and to have not heard that about that happening, like that phenomenon, I mean, that's crazy. So I'm glad. I know that I'm sure people have had that experience and had some, questions about it.
And whenever I text you about that, I was expecting you to be like, yeah, man, this is like, because you have a podcast, and I'm not expecting you, like, I wanted you to say something, but just like maybe Joe will know, like, hey, what, like, I've heard of this before, and like, I've got a pretty substantial collection. I've never heard of a snake biting itself and you go in there and it's still latched on, and I've never heard of that before, and any of the podcasts that I've listened to, I've never even heard it mentioned, so it's, I don't know. I think it's good that it's out there now as far as information, but it was surprising to me that you had not that you should have, but I was just like, well, I guess that I'm okay because I'm not the only person that has never seen this before. I mean, I wish I could show you the pictures, Bill, of what she looked like, but it was, I mean, it wasn't gruesome. It wasn't like crazy, but it was, I'd never seen anything like it. It was very, very foreign to me, so. Well,
and that, like, so with all the rescue nerds that I hang out and talk to, That's actually like a thing. So like our vet, he basically uses our collection as.
There you go. There it is.
Yep.
That's it right there. That's what she
exactly
looked
the
like.
same. Yep. So our vet kind of uses our collection as practice, I guess, for lack of a better term, because cats and dogs pay the bills, and then he wants to mess with reptiles, and zoo vets don't make a lot of money. So, but like that is whenever I hang out with that dude, or he comes to the shop, or whatever it is that we're doing together, like that is kind of how that interaction goes. You know, I teach him all sorts of natural history crap that he'll never remember because it doesn't have anything to do with his job. And then he drops these like little weird things on me every time. And then Erica, when the rescue president, when she told me that, she's the same way. You know, she is a reptile keeper, but probably, you know, not as involved as myself. But she's like crazy knowledgeable on the medical side. And so I'm always like, oh, I saw this weird thing. And then she just has an answer. Like, oh yeah, it's some virus, or oh, it's this, or oh, it's a heart thing. I'm like, how do you know that? And then she comes back with like, how do you know where anacondas live and the way they breathe, or whatever? Like, because we're nerds and we're nerds about different stuff, you know. So like when our vet and his partner did the necropsy on the retic, that was the first time they'd ever done one on an adult python. And like they took pictures and recorded it and went to U of I and presented it and did all this stuff. Because it's weird. Like he knew everything about the anatomy, but he'd never seen it in a thing on my floor. Yeah. You know? And so it kind of goes both ways. Like that dude knows so many weird snake things about medicine that I have no clue, because until something bad happens, I really don't need to know that. Or I call him.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't keep snakes. He's a turtle dork. He keeps some turtles, and then he takes care of snakes. So he knows a lot about his turtles, and he and I can talk turtles and be nerds about it. But when I talk snakes or lizards, he just listens, because he doesn't really have a lot of input. Yeah. When he talks medicine, I shut up or take notes because I don't have any input, you know?
Yeah. I like that you said turtle dork. It seems like all the turtle guys are kind of dorks and snake guys are nerds. There's a difference.
Well, the thing for Illinois is a lot of our endangered stuff is turtles. So
turtles are cool. Turtles are really cool.
How'd you end up with a gopher tortoise, by the way?
Oh, that's really cool. You have a gopher tortoise? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah. That was abandoned in the parking lot of a zoo. And it had been spray painted so that people wouldn't know what it was. The zoo,
I mean, very illegal, right?
Yeah, I was about to say that's a pretty protected animal. Like,
we have the permits.
Yeah. Yes, my wife.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all.
No, it's actually
that's awesome. Sorry.
They're really heavily trafficked because people don't know that. They think they're box turtles. And so a lot of people from the Midwest and the East Coast will vacation in Florida and then bring them home.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a thing?
It's a big problem.
That's crazy as hell, dude.
But what happens is a lot of times they get home and then they'll do, you know, even a moderate level of research and realize they just committed a federal offense with a $25,000 fine attached to it and 5 years in prison. So they freak out. And the assumption is that's what happened with this one. And they painted it like blue and all these goofy colors and dropped it in the zoo parking lot. And it happened to be the zoo that we do some charity work for. And they already had one, and they're both males, and they were fighting. And so he called me and asked if my wife would do her endangered species permit. In Illinois, you have to have an endangered species permit, even if it's federally protected. They don't care. It's still classified the same for the state. And so she filled it out and got the paperwork, and then we did that. And now we've added a bunch of state stuff to it, but that's our only federally protected one.
That's cool, though, man. I didn't even know that you could I didn't even know that was an avenue that you could take as far as keeping go. I just thought that it was a no-go, hands-off species.
There are
you could keep them at all.
Very few people, but some people do breed them. And then even in Illinois, there's a guy with a desert tortoise, which actually came to us temporarily because people thought he had done the wrong thing. But when did that dude get his permit? In the 60s or something? No, he got it in the 80s. Yeah, so he got grandfathered in when the permits became required. Sometime around the year I was born. Anyway, he's had the thing since the 60s. And it came to us through rescue and so on and so forth, went through the legal channels and whatnot. And it was totally legit. Dude's had it for like 50 years and was like, nah, it's good, man. I collected it in California back in the 50s or whatever.
Yeah, back when it didn't matter, man. Back whenever everybody was loving free, brother.
Yeah, some old dude was like, nah, man, I've had it forever. It's cool. And we went through the state and did all the things, and the state came back and they're like, nah, man, he's had it for longer than you've been alive. Give it back to him. All right, cool.
That's awesome that he was able to keep it, you know. I mean, it's protected and stuff, but that's cool, man.
The only thing that sucks with the gopher tortoises is there are a lot of facilities that keep them, but like they're not cool, quote unquote, and they're not as big as a sulcata. So like, it's not even really an SSP kind of thing where like zoos would breed them for reintroduction. Like there are programs in Florida and in the Southeast that do it, you know, but it's not something where like the zoo in Chicago is going to participate. Like it's not cool enough, you know.
It should be cool enough though, man. It's a native North American tortoise. That's pretty dope, dude. Like I feel like that's so badass.
Oh, I teach so many lessons off that thing with the keystone species and the longleaf pine forest and the burrows and
the indigos.
Tons of stuff. Tons of stuff. And it's just a little brown tortoise. Like
they're cool
some blue scraping on its butt.
They're cool.
Like,
yeah, I had Amanda, who's a biologist who works with gopher tortoises, and she was talking about she's interested in the bugs that actually are able to survive due to them going to the bathroom in the burrows. I mean, there's a whole system going on there.
I'm unfamiliar. You need to teach me. I am unfamiliar with this completely.
It was too long ago, and I talked to too many people to remember every podcast. You'd have to go back and listen.
Bathroom.
So check it out. So a gopher tortoise burrow, on average, is like 32 feet deep.
Okay.
And the reason they're called a keystone species, right, is the longleaf pine forest. And so the number of species documented to share the burrow with these things is like 350 plus.
Okay.
Because the burrow, it's crazy.
So much.
But the burrow is so deep and goes so far that it ends up being kind of like biomes. Like it stratifies the burrow.
Okay. Yeah.
And then like if they leave them or they die or or they dig more than one or whatever, then it's
ecosystem.
Then it's indigos and burrowing owls and like it is just on and on. And it's like never ending. And they dig. It's ridiculous. Like I took that 300-gallon trough and I put almost a full ton of soil in it. And then I buried totes that I held up with 4x4s. Like looks like a mine shaft basically. And I just built a tiny mine shaft and then I dumped 1,000 pounds of dirt on it. And that's what he lives in. He's all about like just pushes crap around, throws to like dude's a full-time tunneler.
Full-time dwarf.
Yeah.
That's what I do. That's badass, man.
Incredible, dude. That's the thing. That's the one thing I'm jealous of like guys like you who have the connection with the rescue stuff. I don't want to do anything else that you do, but the fact that you're able to work with an animal like that and get that unique experience, like I don't want to mess with some rescue Argus monitor. I don't want that at all.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I'd want to do that either. I have people that contact me and they're like, "Hey, I got this ball python," and I'm like, "I'm good, bro. I'm good. Like I can help you find a place for it, but I don't want your ball python. I don't.
But that's the thing is people get it twisted. So with the rescue, the purpose of the rescue is it comes in, we give it a health check, or if it needs some sort of health care, which most often it does.
Yeah.
And then the goal is out the door. It this isn't a reptile collection. It doesn't stay.
Yeah.
We do have fosters for things, if it needs to gain weight or longer term stuff.
Health issues, right? Stuff that you need to make sure that it's good to go, right?
Yeah. But most of the fosters, honestly, we have a lot of foster fails where people end up adopting them anyway. But the cool thing about the foster deal was like you could test it out. So like if you foster a bearded dragon and you don't like bugs, then give it back and we'll adopt it out. And maybe you could try fostering a crested gecko. Or you could try fostering a corn snake or so on.
It's a better fit.
Yeah, but it allows people to kind of test run stuff.
So you have to vet, the people that you're like.
Yep.
You do you sit down and talk to them about what they're willing to do and what they're willing not to do.
Yep.
Before you, okay. All right.
And like we make wish lists. We have people. It's always, there's a running joke in our rescue that if a red tegu comes in, we don't post it online because like people get into fights in the comments or like any of the cool stuff. Like people get, I want to adopt it, and it's like, let's.
Red tegus are pretty cool, man.
Cool. And then when the 12 normal ball pythons come in, nobody fights in the comments. It's really weird.
Hey, don't hate on them. That's the main ball. I've got 2, and they're normals.
The rarest of them all. You got it.
Right nowadays, dude. We get some off the wall morphs of ball pythons that come in the rest like big money.
Really?
And yeah.
For real?
Wow. Yeah. And that is a thing too that like, so our rescue is a 501c3. It's all papered. Everything's legit, and it throws people for a loop, man, because we don't alter the fees. The adoption fee is
what it is.
And then, you show up with a pied, albinos, bananas. What else? We've had a couple of 3 and 4 gene animals. And it's like, nah, man, $20 or whatever the fee was at the time.
Hey, good for you doing it. You're doing it the right way, man. I mean,
but the cool thing is that more quote unquote normal or like average keepers adopt those things. Also, we vet that, we're not going to adopt to a flipper or whatever. But more of those things have gone to kids or like single pet households. I think that's super cool. Like we put a $2,000 ball python on there. We're like, yeah, man, we got a bunch of ball pythons this month. So the adoption fees are $10. And then like this family's like, well, little Timmy's getting a cool birthday present. Is it important that it's purple? I don't even know. Like they don't even care.
That's awesome.
Then a piebald or something goes to their house. And they're like, yeah, the white splotches are cool. Is it supposed to have that? Like whatever. That's awesome. I love it.
So have you had people that are trying to like stock their breeding program as far as like just stuff like ball pythons, bearded dragons, stuff like that? So Absolutely. How do you vet that? What do? Do you just like check their online presence or what goes into
Honestly, pretty much everybody in the rescue. Actually, we have a fair mix, but we have a couple of people that are not reptile nerds.
Okay.
Really at all. They are more like animal welfare. Like they just want to help. They want to clean stuff and be helpful. Yeah. It's more of a charitable experience for them, I guess. And then, but the majority of the rescue, we're all full on herp nerds. Like we know the deal. We know the scene. We've been around for years. We understand the good and bad sides.
You can kind of tell, like, okay, this son of
dude, most people out themselves. Okay, most people will say it.
Yeah,
if you message back,
if you've been in there for long enough, you all know what the lingo is. Where you're like, okay,
yeah, but no, like I'm honest to God, like most people will just flat out say it. Like, hey, I'm looking for a male bumblebee, and it's like, oh, what are you trying to make? Like a spinner blast, or like you just start throwing out names. And they're like, oh, yeah, I want to get an Enchi and do this and X, Y, and Z. And it's like, yo, dude, it says the 3rd bulletin down, we don't breed them. And they're like, oh. All right, cool. So is that a no then? Like,
damn. Oh, damn.
Like, if you've been around long enough, like that's just, if you're a car guy, you don't buy a lemon off a used car lot. Like, you know the deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that, and I mean, I'm sure we've been pulled one over on before. But it's rare, you know, and those instances are rare. Like if a whole breeder's collection of ball pythons coming to us, that's happened like twice in the however many years we've been involved. It doesn't happen a lot. It's a king snake or a tegu or, you know, standard pet things. It is a rare occurrence, but then we really, you know, that's when we got to jump on it and vet things and pay attention.
Because you know what's going on. You know the shtick. You know the run that people are going to be like, oh, I can get this for easy money. Da 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 da. I'm going to try to stimulate my breeding projects.
The 3 tegus a month that come in, nobody's calling us for breeding them. They come to my house and hang out for a year before we can find a good family. You know,
isn't that because you need to vet them so intensely, or is it because people are just not interested in the bigger animal?
A little bit of both. We actually have been really fortunate, and I've talked about this at the rescue a couple of times, that I think it's a good sign in the hobby. We don't get very many calls for Nile monitors and green iguanas and like quote unquote dangerous stuff. Like, people get it gets big and aggressive and then they want to ditch it, right? That was always the shtick.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen to us, to be honest.
Do you think that it's because of the availability? Oh, excuse me. The availability of information, like people know, hey, a Nile monitor is not a great starter monitor, stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah. I think people stick to the bread and butter. You know, we get a lot of leopard geckos, we get a lot of bearded dragons, a lot of ball pythons. Now the standard story, I guess, they're not lying, but just their story, is people get it for their kids, they get bored, and then it comes to us. We'll go through runs where it's like poor husbandry, or we'll get like a bunch of goofy bearded dragons that nobody bought lights for, or like weird stuff. Yeah. But the vast majority of it nowadays really does kind of stay with the throwaway pet mentality, which sucks, but it isn't huge, dangerous, hard to rehouse. It's not alligators, right? It's bearded dragons. I can find somebody who wants to keep a bearded dragon and is capable, and I'm not putting a burden on them. Like, I'm not pulling one over on them like, no, if you keep this gator and it's 20 long, it's cool. You know, like, you know,
I'm laughing, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But like, I educate somebody on a crested gecko or a ball python. It's a super simple thing.
Do you get a lot of like rehomed or rehab cresties? Like, is that a common thing?
Not like in maybe the last year or two. But I mean, it's still a pretty common pet. Yeah.
Really?
I feel like, unfortunately, at least with the geckos, it seems as though with snakes, you can neglect that animal and it will survive way past the reasonable time frame. Sure. With the crested gecko, I feel as though it will die. So I feel like that's probably more likely.
Yeah, we don't ever get foster amphibians, right? They're dead. Or chameleons, or, you know, anything with any kind of delicacy. If it comes to us, it's on death's door, or it never makes it to us. You know, the things that make it into the rescue network, and that was actually, you know, part of the downside for years was that's why Niles and red-eared sliders and green iguanas made it into the rescue networks. You could light those things on fire and they would still walk around and eat. Like, they're bulletproof. Yeah. You know? And then some idiot would. And then it would show up at the rescue and it was like, I thought iguanas ate hot dogs, or what. Like, it turns out he will for 5 years or whatever. Gators are the same way. Like, there are so many gators come through the upper Midwest for stupid stories like that eat hamburger and goldfish and stupid crap for 10 years. And then some dude shows up with a 2-foot gator. It's like a cliche because it exists, you know? Yeah. But it's because the animal can. Like, they can. You could beat on them for a decade.
They're tough as nails, man.
Nails. Which is awesome for the animal, not for us to take advantage. Like it's built like that because sometimes you got to chew on raccoons in Florida and not eat fish. It's not.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I volunteered at a rescue for a bit while I lived in Colorado, and
Nice.
and for a bit, I mean, like literally went there twice because, man, they got in this bearded dragon that had such bad MBD and like could barely move around, and just, I don't know, man, it was sad. It was just a real bummer, and it's like I really applaud you for being able to have like the fortitude to go through all that shit and to see animals in trouble. And I don't know, for some reason I just can't stomach that. It's like I have enough trouble if something happens to one of my animals.
Exactly, for sure. I like applaud you for sure. Like
That. Yeah.
Like I had one snake I messed up and let one out, and I can't imagine rehabbing animals that someone just didn't care about at all doing what you're doing. So like kudos to you, man, for real.
That is why the rescue scene gets kind of a rap of being fly by night, right? Yeah. In that rescues pop up and fade away, and people always go to like the flipper, like, oh, they were just trying to flip or whatever. I'm sure that is a thing that probably does happen. I know it does happen. But the reality is, man, that it's burnout. A lot of what makes it seem like rescues fade away is that emotional burnout.
I can see that.
My wife is, I think, furiously scrubbing a sink, trying to ignore me about that exact subject. Because that in our relationship, she is that person, right? It sounds really terrible, but I'm kind of callous about that part of it. And so it bothers me, but not to the extent maybe it probably should.
It doesn't bother you to the extent of like quitting.
Right. Whereas it severely bothers her. And it is something like, that's something that, we discuss. Like you take this in and it comes to the shop and it's like, hey, this thing is not good, and it doesn't matter. Like you're still like, nope, I'm going to fix it because I'm a badass reptile keeper and I'm
a fixer. I'm going to take care of business,
and then the bumper falls off like, or whatever like that. And it's a thing, man. Like, in our rescue, part of the reason like our rescue is well known or like, I don't know, a big deal, is the longevity. And it's been around for a really long time relative to the rescue scene. Because most people are like, look, dude, people don't give a crap about ball pythons. People don't give a crap about bearded dragons. I'm done. They do. Like, I'm not going to look at another mite. I'm not going to look at another MBD. I'm out. And to just, when you put your head down and just dig through it, then now you're Friends of Scales Reptile Rescue. Like, oh, they're the biggest rescue in the Midwest or whatever, like cool accolade or something. And it's like, yeah, man, we ground through 5,000 reptiles in 7 years or whatever insane number, that's the total crap part of it that people don't want to do. Yeah, Erica's going to yell at me, I know. But that's it. The longevity is the people in the rescue side of it just grinding and just a little cold-hearted on it. That works for me. It doesn't for actually what surprised.
Some days we just have to cry, okay?
I wouldn't say it's cold-hearted. So I equivalent that kind of stuff to like, I'm a hunter. I hunt white-tailed deer. I fish. I don't like taking animals' lives. Just this weekend, I had to cull some of my chickens because they're 7 years old, they're not laying anymore, and it's time to bring some new hens into the chicken coop and have some more eggs, because that's why we have chickens, right? I don't enjoy that part of it. It's not, but you have to put it in its place, right? So you're looking at it as, I am bettering a percentage of animals that come through my door. It's life. I can't save them all, but I can better this many of them, and this is better than bettering none of their lives, right?
Yes.
So that's I don't think that that's being callous. I think that that's looking at it in a way that you can actually help something and help these animals. I'm not trying to tell you how to talk or anything like that, but like I don't think that that's a callous thing. I think that that's a way of doing it, and you're helping animals, and it's just a fact of life that there's going to be death involved, and you can't help a lot of the stuff that's going on with the rescues that you're taking in. So,
well, what I always thought was, and I still do, like I actually talked to my wife about it quite a bit, is that a ton of the people in our rescue, and then in rescues in general that I've interacted with because of it, are not me. Like, I figured they would all be like me, where it's just math, right? The statistics are not on my side. And then sometimes I win with an outlier. Everybody scratches off a lottery ticket sometimes. But most of the time you're just burning money for fun. It's math, right? And I approach it that way. They don't. They're much more like her, and they get really upset, and they get very invested, and they, I think that's way harder, to still grind on it and know, hey, dude, you're going to get your heart broke if you fall for all these ball pythons. You know that, right?
Yeah.
And then the couple of people I hang out with at the rescue are like, don't care, let's go. Grab a bottle of Nix and let's start spraying F10 on stuff. They don't care. They just keep going, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that really all of that makes also someone like me reevaluate what I breed also, and then also how I vet my customers. I think Austin is in a good place to where your Brettles pythons are probably going to go to someone who's going to be responsible and is going to keep them. And if they don't, they pass them on to someone else who's responsible. But to breed and sell a lot of low dollar pet grade animals, you're kind of feeding into that, as a breeder. So it's kind of sometimes.
But I hate that, man, because I don't want that stuff to discourage people who breed, and I'm not trying to make fun of corn snakes, but people who breed the more basic pets, right? Because it is vital. If every generation we don't get some 7 to 12-year-old kids to get a bearded dragon, corn snake, leopard gecko, ball python, they'll never get a Boland's python or a lace monitor or a whatever. They won't ever grow up to be us.
I think probably 80% of my animals go to first-time pet owners. I mean, especially at shows. It may even be someone who just held a snake for the first time, which is nice. Or,
See, I think that's super cool.
We always bring out an adult for the kids to handle, or, so even though we'll keep that animal separate, whatever, and we'll have that be the handling animal. So, yeah, I love that aspect of it, and I love that I have corn snakes and able to do that, and I'm able to do that with the species that I work with. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to spin it like there's not a lot of positives, and that's why I still do it. I still do it. I still produce a bunch of animals. So yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. There's not a lot of I don't get a lot of first-time people hitting me up saying, "Hey, I would like a Brettles python." I definitely deal in species that you've had some experience a little bit, to where when you're contacting me, then I know that you've dealt with some kind of reptile, so
you kind of have to do your research just to know that a Brettles python exists. So, like,
I know the first time I saw one, I was like, what is that? I've never even, what is that? I had no idea. The first time I saw an adult female Bell's python was at NERBC in Arlington, and it was like 2013. And I'd never seen one. He had this giant, like 7-foot female just on his shoulders. Like, yeah, this is a Bredl's python. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't even know that existed. I had no idea. At that time, I was still like, no, it's 2012. So I bought my first female in 12, so it had been 12. But I was still like doing ball python morphs and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think that's like the nicest part of when you're initiated in the hobby, but you go to a reptile show and you can still see something new, like the one vendor that has blackhead pythons or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
when you see a blackhead python for the first time in real life, you're like, that's a real thing? What the hell? It looks like a magical creature. It doesn't even look like a real thing.
You just dip that head in ink.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense at all.
Not at all.
But yeah, I feel like, I was obviously trying to end this podcast at 2 hours, but this last hour has been probably far surpassed the first two even. And I thought the first two was a great podcast, but this last hour was fucking amazing, to be honest.
Yeah. So sorry, I kind of got on a tangent, but
I'm sure. Don't apologize to me for sure. Don't apologize to anyone listening, because they're definitely still listening, because the last hour was better than the first two even. So like, yeah. So Austin, where can people get in touch with you?
Hit me up on Rangebeard Reptiles on Facebook or Instagram. I'll respond to both, but if you're an Instagram user, please use Instagram, because Facebook is a dumpster fire, as I said before. So, yeah, I've got a bunch of Bredl's pythons available. I need to take pictures and stuff, but hit me up. I'll take pictures for you if you're interested. So, or if you have questions on anything, Epidora, whatever, I'm an open book. So
yeah, if you've made it 3 hours into the podcast, you're vetted out for the Bredl's python. You're the person who's done the research. And Bill, I know you have a podcast now, man, and I love it with Ryan and then and Erica and your wife.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. A lot of the husbandry knowledge and stuff like that. So yeah, plug the podcast and then Cold Black.
So the podcast is Reptile Room Confessions. And the idea was, so we're all friends. We're two married couples, and we're all neck deep into herpetoculture. My wife is probably the newbie out of the group. And the idea was that, like, we have all these conversations where Ryan is an industry guy, I am an educational guy, and I've kept pretty much anything you can think of that's not venomous. Erica is a vet tech med person, and my wife is basically, in her opinion, a newbie, even though she's kept for 10 years. And so our conversations are always a really varied perspective. Like, I will ask Ryan, like, why does nobody use this kind of light bulb? And then he'll tell me about the industry. Oh, well, price and so on and so forth. Or Erica will ask me some natural history question for medicine. And it's just a lot of varied perspectives. And so our podcast is pretty much those conversations. And then we just pick topics and try to pluck at it from the different angles. Because we've been in it for a long time. Like, I've been doing it for over 20 years. Ryan has. And so we thought, I don't know, that sounds kind of conceited, but like, we thought we had a good perspective to offer to people. I don't want to sound uppity when I say that, but
it's not uppity. You have perspective. You have freaking knowledge and all that stuff. Yeah, come on now. Come on now.
Well, we've just done a lot of stuff, and I that's a big thing that, like, for a lot of the podcasts that I listen to, and a lot of people that have been around for a long time, is I've screwed up so much stuff. And I remember being in grade school, middle school, buying hot rocks and like all the things that are jokes now. Like, if you're new to herpetoculture, you might not know why it's a joke, like because idiots like me burnt stuff on or whatever, like. So it was just that perspective of doing it for a long time, and then we decided to record it and try to make people listen. So it's working, I guess, so far.
And then like Friends of Scales and Cold Black, where can we check that stuff out?
So Friends of Scales Reptile Rescue, you can find on Facebook and Instagram. It is still mostly Facebook for the rescue, and then you go through the website. And we are in the process of updating our website, and we're going to go with the folks, a similar website to the setup for the rescue that's in Georgia. And so it's going to be much more electronically tracked and more of a database setup for people. And so that's like when I was talking about the wish list. If you know that you want to adopt a corn snake or something like that, like we can categorize you better instead of getting a corn snake and posting it on Facebook and then sifting through 32 comments or what have you. We're just trying to better organize ourselves. And so that update is coming. So kind of hang out for that. But we do it. The website is functional. You can go through the process and fill out adoption applications or relinquishment forms. Because of all the stuff with COVID, we do have some pretty specific rules for how we meet people and drop things off. So definitely check out the website to know, when to wear a mask and porch drop-offs and stuff like that. And then Coal Black Exotics is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, pretty much anywhere. I have a TikTok, which is really weird, and I don't know anything about it, but I tried it. All of the stuff on there is kid-friendly. I mostly post pictures of the collection and do natural history lessons in the captions. There are, for people who don't like it, because I randomly get comments all the time, I do also post a bunch of spiders. So if that's not your jam, that's going to show up. So just be aware. And if you go to the Facebook page or really anywhere that has a website link, it takes you to our booking site where you can book. Again, with the COVID stuff, Illinois has a lot of really specific rules. So we wear masks and do all the things that we have to do. And that's actually changed a little bit of how we show animals. So it has to be animals that are able to be wiped down. So I use rescue wipes and rescue spray, which is essentially diluted hydrogen peroxide.
All reptiles are wearing masks, of course.
Yeah, but it's tegus, the tegus, the tortoises, the colubrids, nothing with porous skin. We don't take any amphibians now because I can't, clean necessarily, quote unquote, clean them. So it's a lot of stuff that we can wipe down, which didn't alter our show that much. But, I don't take any arachnids because I don't want to expose them to any cleaning chemicals, and we don't take any amphibians. So there have been some changes, but Illinois is allowing non-essential stuff now. And I've been told since March that I'm non-essential. So now I'm in the boat. But yeah, we're kind of back to business.
Awesome. As for me, Port City Pet, Port City Pythons, portcitypet.com. All the links are down below. All the links for these guys are down below too. Austin, Bill, this was amazing. Thanks for hanging out.
It was a great time, man. Bill, it was awesome meeting you, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future, honestly.
For sure, man. It was awesome.
I'm pumped to have talked to you for, 3 hours and 12 minutes. I'm pumped, man.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. I will catch everyone next week.